Honorable members of the National Assembly, honorable cabinet ministers, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, permanent secretaries and heads of institutions, staff of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, senior government officials here in present, service chiefs, religious leaders, members of the press, all other invited guests, and the general public, good morning to you all and welcome to the National Assembly. Honorable members, in accordance with Section 1521 of the 1997 Constitution and Orders 86-1 of the Standing Orders, the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs tabled the estimates of revenue and expenditure of the Gambia for the fiscal year 2023. That is 1st January to 31st December 2023, both days inclusive, on Monday, 14th November 2022. Accordingly, and pursuant to Section 152(1)(a) of the 1997 Constitution and Order 86-2 of the Standing Orders, the National Assembly considered and approved the said 2023 estimates with amendments on Saturday, 26 November 2022. Accordingly, in pursuance of Section 1523 of the 1997 Constitution and Order 87-2 of the Standing Orders, the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs shall today introduce the Appropriation Bill 2023 for your consideration and enactment by this August Assembly. In doing so, and as per Order 87-4 of the Standing Orders, the Honorable Minister will set out any amendments made to the estimates, present and outline government's fiscal policies and programs for the year 2023, commonly referred to as the budget speech. Therefore, honorable members, the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs will proceed to table the Appropriation Bill 2023 before us today. I thank you all. Clerk, can we continue?
Bill, Appropriation Bill 2023, first reading by the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs.
Honorable members, I now invite the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs to table the bill.
Good morning, Honorable Speaker, Honorable colleague ministers here in present, members of the National Assembly, members of the Diplomatic Corps, press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I beg to move that the bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Services of the Government of the Gambia for the period 1st January 2023 to 31st December 2023, both days inclusive, be read a second time. Introduction. The Gambian economy set out on a path to recovery despite the great uncertainty about the post-pandemic economic landscape, with significant improvements, especially in the services and industry sector. In 2021, the medium-term growth prospects were high, premised on a global vaccine rollout, development partner support for the Gambia vaccine program, and better than expected resilience of some economic sectors. However, this situation was short-lived because the beginning of 2022 came with the emergence of the Russia-Ukraine war, lowering growth expectations, and putting major setbacks in the recovery path. Initially optimistic growth prospects were dampened as the conflict severely affected global supply chains and commodity prices. These place major obstacles in the growth trajectory of not only the domestic economy, but economies across the globe, bringing about downward revision to growth projections. The war has been a major blow to the global economy, with economies across the world registering higher inflation and slower growth in 2022. With Russia and Ukraine being major commodity producers, the supply chain disruptions triggered by closure of major seaports in the region increased prices significantly, eroded real incomes, and consequently affected demand. The ripple effects of these manifested in the domestic economy, pushing inflation to double digits for the first 9 months of 2022, a level that the Gambia has not experienced in the last 20 years. As we face these unprecedented times and global challenges with effects being felt in households across the country, the government has intervened through various channels using both fiscal and monetary policy tools. With that said, it is imperative to note that it has been a challenging task striking a balance between fighting the negative impact of the crisis, especially on the population, and keeping the economy on a sustained growth path. Similar to the basic commodities, the global oil price hikes translated to unbearable domestic fuel price hikes, which triggered the need for government to provide subsidies to the tune of $1.3 billion in the first 3 quarters of 2022 to ease the effects of underpopulation. While this gave much needed assistance to the Gambian population, it also meant over $1 billion of foregone revenue for the government, which is unsustainable. As fuel prices have recently taken a downward turn, government moved towards a gradual adjustment of the domestic retail prices to recover losses in oil revenue. In addition to fuel price subsidies, government made other fiscal interventions, including the continued discount of 20% of the CIF value of basic commodities, fertilizer, 30% increase in the salaries of the civil service, and a revision of the 2022 budget featuring a series of expenditure cuts and revenue measures to create the fiscal space needed to accommodate these interventions and remain resilient against the shocks. To curb inflation, government took, through the central bank, a tightening of monetary policy stance by increasing the monetary policy rate by 2 percentage points during the course of the year. This was done with a careful consideration of the potential impact on growth as the economy tries to recover. Government also made foreign currency intervention to the tune of $87 million to support the availability of essential commodities and essential services. In the coming year and over the medium term, prudent policy response to realign with emerging socio-economic priorities will be crucial to remain resilient against the shocks and get back on a path to recovery. This includes reforms in key sectors which continue to be critical to support the systems to sustain recovery and growth in the medium term. Macroeconomic overview and developments in the global economy. As per the October World Economic Outlook, the global economy continued to face steep challenges shaped by the lingering effects of 3 powerful forces: Russia-Ukraine war, a cost of living crisis caused by persistent and broadening inflationary pressures, and the ongoing impact of the pandemic-related lockdowns and supply chain disruptions, especially in China. Global growth is forecast to slow from 6% in 2021 to 3.2% in 2022, and 2.7% in 2023. This is the weakest growth outlook since 2001, except for the global financial crisis period, and the acute phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, and reflects significant slowdowns for the largest economies. About a third of the world economy faces 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, which is recession. More than a third of the global economy will contract this year or next, while 3 largest economies, respectively United States, European Union, and China, will continue to stall. In short, the worst is yet to come. For many people in 2023 will feel like a recession. The Russia-Ukraine war has led to a severe energy crisis in Europe that is sharply increasing the cost of living and hampering economic activities. Gas prices in Europe have increased more than 4-fold since 2021, with Russia cutting deliveries to less than 20% of their 2021 levels, raising the prospect of energy shortages over the next winter and beyond. More broadly, the conflict has also pushed up food prices in the world market, despite the recent easing of the Black Sea grain deal, causing serious hardship for low-income households worldwide, and especially in low-income countries. For advanced economies, growth is projected to slow from 5.2% in 2021 to 2.4% in 2022 and 1.1% in 2023. Growth in emerging markets and developing economies is expected to decline to 3.7% in 2022 and remain the same for 2023. However, growth in low-income developing countries especially is projected to rise from 4.1% in 2021 to 4.8% in 2022, then to 4.9% in 2023 respectively. Global trade volumes have been estimated to decline from 10% in 2021 to 4.3% in 2022, which is projected to further decline to 2.5% in 2023. The slowdown in trade mainly reflects the decline in global output growth. Supply chain restrictions have been a further drag, with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York Global Supply Chain Pressure Index having declined in recent months, largely because of a drop in Chinese supply delivery times, but it is still above its normal level, indicating continued disruption. The Russia-Ukraine war is one factor causing the decline in global trade. The United States dollar's appreciation in 2022 by about 13% in nominal effect terms as of September compared to 2021 average is likely to have further slowed world trade growth, considering the dollar's dominance in trade invoicing and the implied pass-through in consumer and producer prices outside the United States. Whereas the world trade growth is declining, global trade balances have widened and are projected to rise further in 2022. The widening of the balances has reflected the pandemic's impact. It has also, in 2022, mirrored increase in commodity prices associated with the war in Ukraine, which has raised the balance for oil net exporters and reduced them for the net importers. While inflation is increasingly important, firms still see COVID-19 as a dominant risk. The continued high numbers of COVID-19 mentions in the firm's earnings calls may reflect the pandemic's lingering effect on the labor market and supply chains. Global inflation is forecast to rise from 4.7% in 2021 to 8.8% in 2022, before declining to 6.5% in 2023. Upside inflation surprises have been most widespread among advanced economies, with greater variability in emerging markets and developing economies. The upward inflation revision for advanced economies is expected to rise from 3.1% in 2021 to 7.2% in 2022, before declining to 4.4% by 2023. For emerging markets and the developing economies, inflation is expected to rise from 5.9% in 2021 to 9.9% in 2022, before declining to 8.1% in 2023. Emerging markets and developing economies are estimated to have seen inflations of about 10% in the second quarter of 2022 and face a peak inflation of about 11% in the third quarter, the highest since 1999. The sharp appreciation of the United States dollars adds significantly to domestic price pressures and to the cost of living crisis of these countries. Capital flows have not recovered, and many low volume and developing economies remain in debt distress. The 2022 shocks will reopen economic wounds that were only partially healed following the pandemic. For many emerging markets, the strength of the United States dollar is causing acute challenges, tightening financial conditions and increasing the cost of imported goods. The United States dollar is now at its highest level since the early 2000s. So far, this appreciation appears mostly driven by fundamental factors such as the tightening of the monetary policy in the United States and the energy crisis. The global economy's future health rests critically on the successful calibration of the monetary policy, the cause of the war in Ukraine, and the possibility of further pandemic-related supply-side disruptions, for example, in China. Positive measures ought to be put in place to mitigate the negative effects of the current macroeconomic and geopolitical factors. The impact of this on the domestic economy. Similar to global growth projections, the domestic economy is projected to register a modest growth in real terms from 4.3% in 2021 to 4.5% in 2022. Growth in the domestic economy remains challenging and depends on the global economic recovery through tourism and trade channels for further recovery. Mirroring trends in the global economy, the current account deficit is estimated to widen to 13.9% of the GDP in 2022, driven by infrastructure-related imports and the rising oil and food import bill, not only due to increases in price of commodities, but also because the dollar is depreciated against the strengthening dollar, which is a universal phenomenon. Supply chain disruptions and the rising global inflation have worsened existing challenges in the supply and increased the price of essential commodities. In the domestic economy, average prices of both food and non-food commodities have been on the rise, bringing about unprecedented inflationary pressures. Inflation year-on-year stood at 13.3% as of end of September, and is expected to continue on this path due to uncertainty surrounding the trajectory of the war and the outlook on oil prices, especially in the light of the OPEC recent decision to cut production. On a more positive note, developments in the tourism sector this year are promising, despite the precarious conditions of the West. Tourist arrivals recorded in the fourth quarter of 2022 exceeded 47,000 compared to 18,000 recorded in the corresponding period in 2021. Developments in the domestic economy, real sector. The economic performance in 2022 has been relatively weak against initial projections made earlier in 2021. Real GDP growth for 2022 is estimated at 4.5%, a modest growth from 4.3% registered in 2021, when recovery from the pandemic was way underway. This modest growth is on the back of a contraction in industry and minimal growth within the services sector due to the Russia-Ukraine crisis. The agricultural sector is projected to register a modest growth, a growth of 6% in 2022 compared to 4.7% in 2021. This increase in growth is largely attributable to a relatively good rainy season, bringing about improvements in performance in crops, livestock, and forestry subsectors. The industry sector is expected to decline to 5.6% in 2022, coming from a strong base of 10.4% in 2021. This is largely as a result of a drop in the performance in construction and subdued recovery in manufacturing, as supply chain disruptions affected prices and the availability of both manufacturing and construction inputs. In the same vein, a risk of declining private remittances due to the rising cost of living in the West is expected to reduce private construction activities. Growth in the service sector is projected to remain at the same rate of 1.9% in 2022 as registered in 2021. This is because the better than expected performance in the tourism arrivals is not strong enough to make up for the relatively poor performance expected in wholesale and retail trade and finance and insurance, as well as a modest performance in transport and storage, as well as the communication sectors. Still reeling from the lingering effects of the pandemic, the sector continues to face challenges as the shock from the war has had similar effects, making recovery very difficult. Nonetheless, the impressive number of tourist arrivals registered so far this year indicates great recovery and growth prospects going forward. The fiscal sector. Revenue and grants declined from 15.1 billion in the first 9 months to 14.2 billion in the same period 2022. The decline between the two periods is mostly attributed to a decline in the domestic revenue by 13%, specifically in taxes on international trade. This stems from increasing the level of subsidies on fuel to support social safety, among others, due to the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war on oil prices. Total expenditure increased marginally to 18.8 billion in the first 9 months of 2022, compared to 18.7 in the previous year. This was due to an increase in the current expenditure by 8% from 11.6 billion to 12.6 billion. During the period under review, personnel emoluments increased by 22% from 3.3 billion to 4.1 billion as a result of the 30% civil service salary increment introduced in July. Other charges recorded an outturn of 6.2 billion compared to 5.6 billion in the same period of 2021, indicating a growth of 12%. This significant increase was due to the increase in subsidies and transfers, which increased by 20% through subvention to agencies. Interest payments amount to 2.3 billion compared to 2.7 billion a year ago, recording contraction of 16%. Similarly, external and domestic interest payments declined by 19% and 16% respectively. The fiscal deficit, including the grants, worsened from 3.6 billion at the end of September 2021 to 4.4 billion in the corresponding period in 2022. Although grants increased, it was not sufficient to offset the impact in the decline of revenue for the period. The deficit excluding grants also worsened to 8.4 billion in 2022 from 6.7 billion in 2021. Revenue loss from tax exemptions, primarily duty waivers, increased from 1.1 billion in the first 9 months of 2021 to 2.2 billion in 2022. This is largely due to the implementation of the ongoing projects in rural roads, OIC, and agriculture education sectors. The public debt stock amount to 90.7 billion at the end of September, compared to 83.8 billion at the same period. The increase of the public debt stock is explained by the foreign exchange loss on the foreign debt component of the debt stock, an increase in the domestic borrowing to the amount of 3.2 and 3.7 billion respectively. However, government is still within the domestic borrowing target as approved in 2022 national budget. Of the total debt stock in 2022, the domestic debt constitutes 35.9 billion, while the external debt stock constitutes 51 billion. Monetary policy, monetary sector. Growth in monetary aggregates have been decelerating, reflecting the impact of the ongoing crisis on the balance of payments on the net foreign assets of the central bank and commercial banks. Money supply grew, slowed from 23.7% in June 2021 to 9.9% as at the end of September 2022, owing to a contraction in the net foreign assets of both the central bank and commercial banks. At end September 2022, total money supply stock amount to 64 billion. The net domestic assets of the banking system remain the main source of liquidity that continue to drive the growth of the money supply. Growth in the net domestic asset, the main source of liquidity, remained robust, increasing by 30.8% at the end of September 2022. The increase in the net domestic asset was supported by increased borrowing by government and private sector. Annual reserve money growth contracted to 6% at the end of September from 24% recorded in 2021. The contraction in reserve money reflected the contraction in the reserve of commercial banks by 16%, in contrast to the marginal increase in currency in circulation. External sector. Preliminary balance of payment estimates show that the current account balance widened to a deficit of $25.6 million in the first half of 2022 from a deficit of $8.3 million in the corresponding year period of 2021. The goods account balance recorded a deficit of $292 million in the first half of 2022 from a deficit of $31.3 million in the corresponding period of 2021. The widening deficit in the goods account reflects mainly the marked increase in the imports, especially the minerals and oils, vehicles, cereals, coupled with less than expected increase in the re-export trade. As at the end of September 2022, imports rose to $317.5 million compared to $281.3 million in the same period 2021. Driven by the increase in global commodity prices, exports increased to $25.5 million in the first half of 2022 from 20.6 in the corresponding period of 2021. The services account balance rose to a surplus of $24.8 million in the first half of 2022 from a deficit of $5 million in the same period a year ago. This reflects an increase in tourist arrivals of 96%. The resumption of transfers through unofficial channels following the reopening of the international travel is putting a damper on the inflows recorded in the official statistics. As a result, current transfers declined to a net of $259.7 million in the first half of 2022 from a net inflow of $284.3 million in the same period of 2021, representing a decline of 8.7%. Some capital transfers, mainly project grants, the general special drawing rights allocation from the IMF helped mitigate the impact of the deterioration in the current account and enable the central bank to maintain a comfortable level of external reserve buffer. In addition, there was a net inflow in the financial account during the year, dominated by foreign direct investment and other investments. The capital and financial account registered a net inflow of $182 million in the first half of 2022 compared to $96.5 million recorded in the same period. Honorable Speaker, key sectors of the economy. We start with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. The upgraded web-based integrated IFMIS system is currently being extended to subvented entities, agencies, including hospitals and donor-funded projects. This will facilitate the production of more comprehensive government consolidated financial statements and improve the transparency and accountability of public resources. To further support the Treasury single account, a payment gateway portal is currently being developed. This would further facilitate the automation of revenue collection process across the country and ensure that the government revenue is collected electronically. This is expected to greatly improve revenue performance and reporting, towards supporting the full implementation of the Treasury single account. The government of the Gambia, through support from AfriTac West of the IMF, is in the process of implementing an asset management policy for use across the government. This will help track all fiscal assets, property, plant, and machinery of the government. Currently, work is ongoing to produce an initial draft prior to the arrival of the technical assistance. The asset management policy is one of the fundamental aspects towards migrating to international public sector accounting standards, accrual accounting. In a bid to build on the gains registered, foster development, and address the existing challenges, particularly following the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the climate crisis, the government, through the Ministry of Finance, has initiated the formulation of a Green Recovery-focused National Development Plan, NDP 2023 to 2027, which will succeed the NDP 2018 to 2021, and the Long-Term Development Vision 2023 to 2050, which will succeed the Vision 2020. The former will guide government's development efforts and inform the public investment program and development strategies in the medium term, whilst the latter will serve as an anchor for a series of medium-term national development plans. The drafts of both plans are expected to be completed and adopted by the end of the year. Government will engage in an intensive resource mobilization effort for the recovery-focused National Development Plan in 2023. The Gambia presented its second voluntary national review this year to the United Nations, and the outcome of which will feed into the formulation process of the recovery-focused National Development Plan and will help in accelerating the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has challenged the implementation of the NDP, eroding some of the gains that have been registered so far. The continuing conflict between Russia and Ukraine will pose a risk to the implementation of the recovery-focused NDP in terms of resource mobilization, including domestic resources. In this regard, the government will explore innovative and sustainable financing mechanisms to further enhance domestic resource mobilization to finance our development priorities. The ministry has recently reviewed the 2022 to 2026 medium-term debt management strategy that seeks to help achieve the debt management objectives. Financing needs are met at the lowest possible cost, consistent with a prudent degree of risk. To achieve this objective, the ministry developed an annual borrowing plan with a 3-month rolling basis issuance calendar on both the ministry's website and the central bank websites. This is geared towards enhancing transparency in public debt and provide investors with guidance on government's borrowing plan and strategy. The ministry, in collaboration with the central bank, has introduced regular bond issuance program. This allows the government to issue medium and longer-term dated domestic instruments to provide medium-term to long-term financing and address financing and refinancing risk in the domestic debt portfolio. With support from the African Development Bank, the government is currently conducting a public expenditure and financial accountability assessment. The objective of this assessment is to provide a general understanding of the ongoing public financial management reforms performance and assess the gains in the public financial management reforms. The assessment report is expected in early 2023. The government continues to benefit from support from the development partners to implement development projects. To this end, the EU has made commitment to support the government in the medium term in the areas of macroeconomic stability and economic performance, public financial management reforms, budget transparency and oversight, and adopting a new NDP. In the light of these reforms, A new Public Procurement Bill 2022 was recently passed by this August National Assembly, and the Gambia Public Procurement Authority is currently developing the regulations which will be finalized by this year, end of this year, to make procurement more transparent and value for money for public expenditure. In addition to the above, there is support from EU to accelerate the progress on the public financial management reforms, acceleration of the TRRC white paper implementations, gender-based violence, sexual harassment, human rights violations, migrations, improvements in the National Environment Agency's technical capability, elections, and other legal matters. The government of the Gambia, through the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, has initiated reforms activities to strengthen the financial position and the corporate governance of state-owned enterprises. Key among the reform agenda is the introduction of performance contracts to challenge, measure, and evaluate the performance of the SOEs. In this regard, the ministry has already signed a performance contract with NAWEC, and 3 further SOEs will shortly be done. Negotiations are at an advanced stage to sign the contracts with the Gambia Ports Authority, Social Security and Housing Finance Corporations, and the Gambia National Petroleum Corporation, all of which are expected to be signed before the end of this year. The ministry intends to sign performance contracts with all SOEs in a gradual and phased manner. The ministry has also submitted a draft of the SOE bill to this August Assembly. The bill centers on the creation of an SOE commission that will serve as an oversight and regulatory body for all SOEs. It will also strengthen corporate governance issues such as reporting requirements, transparency initiatives, and selection and functioning of board members. Government is committed to ensuring that ministries, directorates, and agencies' budgets are anchored on national priorities in order to attain the national development objectives. The ministry seeks to consolidate and strengthen program-based budgeting throughout 2023 and subsequent years by improving and expanding on what is already in place. A revitalized program-based budgeting system will underpin the new NDP plan as it emerges in 2023, providing the planning framework and a practical accountability framework for achievement of the most important national priorities. In addition, as part of the efforts to improve stakeholder engagements and ensure that the budget process is participatory, the Budget Directorate organized a constructive dialogue with the civil society organizations to give citizens a say in how the public funds are spent. Engagements are also held with the private sector aimed at improving private and public sector planning and policies to stimulate inclusive growth and development. No wonder we have seen active engagement in the budget process this year, and it's much welcome. The government is also aware of the need to reduce inequality gap between the rich and the poor, as well as between the genders. Hence, with the technical support from the IMF, the ministry is running a pilot on gender-based budgeting. This has been rolled out to 3 ministries and should be rolled out to all MDAs by 2025. This will also entail the development of a work plan and the preparation of a draft template for gender-based budgeting results framework. A Directorate of Revenue and Tax Policy has been established at the ministry to provide a more strategic focus on tax policy formulation, design, and monitoring. The Directorate is currently taking stock of existing tax systems, laws, and institutional arrangement supporting our domestic tax system. The aim is to initiate a paradigm shift in tax policy, anchored on a robust domestic resource mobilization strategy. The recent economic crisis and regional efforts in harmonizing taxes have brought to light the need for tax policies that will build resilience, underpinned by a strong legal and regulatory framework that will guide and facilitate harmonization efforts. The tax expenditure has been an area of concern for the ministry, and intentional steps have been taken to carefully assess its magnitude develop solid plans to work on a framework to curtail and better manage this going forward. Over the medium term, the Directorate's work will center on regularizing and standardizing all tax-related systems and practices so as to set a tone for improved revenue mobilization through a comprehensive tax policy. This will include working with all government MDAs to carry out a complete review of all activities related to revenue collection, catalog all revenue-related laws, and identify potential areas for much-needed reforms to support domestic resource mobilization. In a bid to advance the rationalization of subvented entities, the Ministry, in collaboration with the Central Bank, intends to transform the Social Development Fund to an independent financial institution. Similar efforts are being made to address the multiplicity of subvented institutions, currently which stands at about 60 agencies, with an annual budgetary allocation of about $4 billion. This is primarily aimed at rationalizing resource allocation. A review of subvented entities will be conducted in collaboration with government stakeholders and development partners in the next year. With a review to public investment management, the Gambia Strategic Review Board was created to enhance efficiency of public investment. The board is responsible for the appraisal and endorsement of all programs and projects to ensure their compliance and alignment to the national development priorities and strategies. During this year, the board has successfully reviewed the mainstreaming of TVET in the primary, secondary, and open school education to improve the perspectives of youths within and outside the main education system to access labor market and/or benefits, become self-employed. The board has also reviewed the West African Regional Digital Integration Program, WADIP, under the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy to increase broadband access and usage and strengthen the foundations for the establishment of a single-digit market in West Africa. With the support from the World Bank, the Ministry has developed a medium-term policy framework for the Public Investment Program 2022 to 2025, which is aligned with the 2023 fiscal year budget cycle and the NDP. The Public Investment Program will be piloted to key sectors with high involvement in capital investment projects such as health, education, agriculture, infrastructure, energy, and environment for ongoing projects, both using the GLF and donor funds. The Ministry will work with the development partners to develop capabilities and capacity of the pilot sectors on the public investment program and later roll out to other sectors. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, through the support of UNDP, developed and validated the Gambia Aid Policy 2023 to 2032. The key objective of the aid policy is to increase the effectiveness of external assistance and provide a basis on which the additional aid required to meet the country's short to medium-term needs can be mobilized. Productive sectors, agriculture. The agricultural sector has registered significant growth during the last season due to good rainfall and tremendous support by the government and development partners. The production of major agricultural commodities has increased, and as a result, the per capita availability of imported food items has increased despite the increase in population. There is overwhelming evidence that the output of agricultural research continue to benefit our farming population and the entire population of our country. In view of this, agriculture is being accorded top priority in the country. The government plans to take up scientific and technological interventions for higher agricultural growth, especially towards climate resilience, as climate change continues to pose unprecedented challenges to the farming community. The Ministry of Agriculture is implementing a total of 8 active agricultural projects with a total portfolio of $294 million geared towards the development transformation and modernization of the agricultural sector, with focus on key value chains, namely rice, maize, horticulture, to enhance the thematic areas which are well aligned with the ongoing NDP. A number of projects are being implemented through the ministries, departments, and agencies to enhance climate resilience, youth capacity and employment, income and food security, and the development and promotion of pro-poor technologies, among others. While the public sector remains the primary source of finance for the agricultural sector in the last 5 years, government intends to change these dynamics in the next 5 years. To that effect, the government shall create a risk-sharing mechanism with a view to de-risk the agricultural sector in terms of financial services from financial institutions. The government will create a fund that will avail up to 70% guarantee to the financial institutions for credit financing of agricultural investment by either individuals or small and medium-sized enterprises. This, we hope, will induce the needed capital to transform and modernize agriculture for the benefit of every Gambian. Fisheries and water resources. The fisheries sector remains high on the government development agenda as having enormous potential to contribute to the national socio-economic development. The ministry continues to make interventions with the objective of increasing fish production, eliminating or reducing post-harvest losses, and increasing the fish availability to the interior of the country, especially to increase the protein intake of the rural communities. The fisheries sector is faced with a myriad of challenges, including climate change, the impact of COVID-19, and Russia-Ukraine conflict. The latter has destabilized trade routes and created a rise in oil prices, which is the major input for both artisanal and industrial fishing vessels. The soaring price of oil have had serious negative impact on the entire fisheries value chain, such as an increase in the cost of pre-harvest fishing inputs, and a rise in unemployment and a fall in the foreign exchange earnings. The sector also continues to suffer from growing, irregular, unreported, and unregulated fishing from both the artisanal and industrial fishing, coupled with increased pressures on marine resources due to overexploitation and population growth factors. With these challenges in mind, the government will continue to make significant interventions to improve conditions in the industry. In the area of artisanal fisheries, government is providing fisheries infrastructure facilities, fishing-related equipment, and a means for fish distribution and marketing within the country in collaboration with development partners. Through different partnerships, improved fish smoking facilities such as the FAO Charoy technology have been provided in major fish landing sites. The provision of the FAO Charoy fishing technology smoking facility will contribute to the processing of high-quality standard smoked fish products. It will improve the health of women, fish smokers, to as exposure to smoke is virtually non-existent. The technology is efficient as it uses less fuel and wood compared to the traditional methods of fish smoking. Through the Climate Smart Rural Water Supply and Sanitation Development Project, with funding from the African Development Bank, the Water Resources Department has now constructed 108 solar-powered pipe water supply systems out of a targeted 144. This is aimed at providing safe and quality drinking water to 400,000 rural settlers. Additional dredging will continue once the rainy season ends, which is now. Additionally, Water Resources Department, through support from the Japanese government, has constructed 27 solar-powered pipe water supply systems to benefit people in rural communities. The government of the Gambia has invested $10 million on the drilling and rehabilitation of boreholes in the Central and Upper River regions. This, upon completion of the program, we expect 17 communities to benefit and have access to safe and quality drinking water. The Fisheries Department, through funding from the Green Climate Fund, will embark on a $25 million project to enhance climate resilience of the vulnerable fishing communities. This project will also intervene to rehabilitate existing fisheries jetties in Banjul and ensure licensed industrial vessels comply with landing requirements in the Gambia, as well as increase employment, availability of fish for domestic consumption, and ultimately reduce malnutrition and poverty. Communications and digital economy. The decisions to decouple the former Ministry of Information and Communication into two separate ministries in May 2022 reaffirmed government's commitment to the realization of the objective of its digital transformation agenda. The unfortunate internet shutdowns experienced on 4 occasions this year reinforced the urgent need for government to establish a secondary landing station to provide adequate redundancy in the first mile and also support requisite capacity needs to accelerate the digital transformation process. The ministry upgraded and expanded its LTE network that provides broadband services, connectivity to senior government officials and MDAs. Some MDAs entirely depend on this government LTE network infrastructure as the main source of internet connectivity to support their day-to-day operations and service delivery. Cyber threats are a major challenge to the digitalization process, and the government therefore prioritizes the strengthening of the national cybersecurity capabilities and capacities. These efforts are anchored on the pillars of the National Cybersecurity Policy Strategy 2022 to 2026. The ministry is currently rolling out third phase of the digital addressing initiative in the West Coast region, which is expected to significantly boost revenue generation for the central and local governments in the region. In a bid to increase targeted investment in ICT sector, the next phase of the digital development advocacy and investment efforts will focus on attracting foreign direct investment and creating an environment for innovative financing arrangement among stakeholders to support the ICT program implementation. The ministry is set to implement the recommendation from the Digital Literacy Feasibility Study conducted in 2021 with support from the AFDB. This includes the implementation of an aggressive campaign to encourage girls to take up ICT as career path. In an effort to increase access to broadband and digital services in West Africa region, the project development objective of WADIP aims to provide technical and financial support to digital markets. To spur research and development in ICT sector, the ministry is on a roadmap to establish technology hubs in the Greater Banjul area and across all regions. The objectives of the initiative include fostering innovation, create employment and employability, and provide transformative ICT-driven solutions across the sector. Tourism and culture. The emergence of the global pandemic and the recent Russia-Ukraine conflict has negatively impacted tourism and dampened previously optimistic prospects as the economy started to recover from COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these shocks and challenges, tourism remains resilient and poised to rebound in the short term, with the right recovery strategies being put in place by the Ministry of Tourism and Culture in partnership with tourism stakeholders and development partners. As such, well-thought-out policy reforms have been rolled out, culminating in the formulation of the new tourism policy and strategy called the National Tourism Policy and Strategy 2022 to 2031. The policy aims to transform the Gambia's tourism sector by fostering public-private partnerships, institutional and human resources strengthening, product development and regeneration, effective destination marketing and source market diversification, domestic tourism, as well as developing a community-based tourism and ecotourism, intensifying e-marketing and digitization, and addressing climate and environmental issues. The ministry is committed to improving the tourism sector's performance and youth employment prospect, and as such has embarked on a few interventions, including a move towards digitization, the implementation of stringent health and safety measures, the construction of 3 roads in the tourism development areas, leading to major hotels, the renovation of craft markets, and the building of hubs to promote collective trading of tourism products in partnership with YEP and ITC, collection and digitalization of valuable cultural practices and traditions to preserve cultural heritage in partnership with the University of Hamburg, and the enhancement of ecotourism and community-based tourism through the deployment of regional tourism officers in all regions of the country. In addition to these efforts, the ministry has also secured a grant of United States $68 million from the World Bank to support the diversification and climate resilience of the tourism sector in the Gambia. The project aims to assist in strengthening the institutional policy framework, improve capabilities and access to finance for the tourism-related micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, suppliers, and enhance the attractiveness of selected existing but underdeveloped destinations. The project will also strengthen the sustainability of the coastal areas. Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment Ministry. Through the Ministry of Trade, the government is strengthening its collaboration with trading partners to support trade integration and employment. As part of these efforts, MOTAI has signed a new country UNIDO program 2022 to 2027 to support private sector development in key strategic sectors as part of the post-COVID-19 recovery programs. In addition, the ministry is also working with ECOWAS under the ECOWAS Academic Mobility Scheme to promote development of practical skills of youths to enhance their employability. At the continental level, the government continues to be fully committed to the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the government has strengthened the Gambia's preparedness for the AFCFTA. The ministry, with the support for United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, has formulated an AFCFTA national implementation strategy to leverage on the opportunities of the AFCFTA, while at the same time addressing challenges of the scheme and strengthening the institutional, policy and regulatory frameworks for effective implementation of the agreement. To enhance resilience of the business in the post-COVID world, the ministry has conducted a new national e-commerce assessment in collaboration with the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, with the aim of enhancing the MSMEs' access to digital technology to improve their businesses. The findings of this assessment are already incorporated in the new recovery-focused national development plan. The ministry, through its projects, provided technical and financial support to MSMEs to enhance their recovery process. As part of the She Trade community, the government continues to support women-owned businesses. This year, the hub has registered an additional 45 women-owned businesses, making a total of 138 She Trades companies that the ministry is working with, providing the relevant skills and support to improve their production capabilities. On competition matters, the competition is a key driver of growth, and having an effective competition regime is one of the pillars of a vibrant market economy. As part of its mandate, the Gambia Competition and Consumer Protection Commission conducted a series of market studies and investigations in various sectors such as airlines, real estate, pharmaceuticals, essential commodities, groundnut, and cement, and issued policy advice in relation to the findings in each of these sectors. Among the priorities of the Commission for 2023 will include the setting up of regional offices and consumer protection tribunals in all administrative regions, conducting investigations into food products that are expired, construction sector, and food that do not meet the required weights and measurements. The authority will also develop a framework that would ensure consumers in the digital finance market are adequately protected and conduct an assessment on the education sector to make educational products and services more affordable and consumer-oriented. On employment promotion, the Ministry has finalized and received Cabinet approval and launched the National Employment Policy and Action Plan 2022 to 2026 with the objective of creating 150,000 jobs during the life of the policy. The objective of this policy is to create productive employment in the productive sectors. To further strengthen the labor administration in the country, the Ministry, in collaboration with the judiciary, has established industrial tribunals in all regions of the country. To track Gambian labor market and migration trends, the Ministry has established the labor market and migration information system, which is to be launched in early 2023. The Ministry is developing an enterprise formalization strategy aimed at formalizing informal businesses, broadening the tax base of the economy, and creating decent jobs for the Gambian youths. With regard to the investment promotion and facilitation, the Ministry, through GAIPA, has been able to attract $36.9 million through special investment certificates, with the potential to create 1,185 jobs. To facilitate access to finance, the Ministry, through GAIPA, has established the Enterprise Development Fund, which will be used to support micro and small and medium-sized enterprises. Another significant achievement by the Ministry is the identification of land for the special economic zones for commercial and industrial purposes in 4 different locations in the Lower River region. The construction of a modern agro-pole to provide required facilities for provision of agro-processing and cold storage services is being supported by Enabel at one of the economic zones sites in Jinoy in LRR. The construction for this site is a cash for work and has provided useful employment to the Jinoy community and is at an advanced stage of completion. As part of government efforts under the EU-funded WAPCOM project to build a new food testing laboratory as a national reference test lab at the Gambia Standards Bureau complex in Abuko, the Ministry, with technical support from West African Competitiveness Project, is developing a national laboratory policy. This will provide a more coherent approach to the coordination of laboratory services in the Gambia. In addition, the Ministry, in collaboration with UNIDO, is establishing a national food testing laboratory as well as a secondary laboratory for light testing under the WACOM program. During the year, the Weights and Measures Bureau has been able to verify over 2,520 commercial weighing and measuring devices, including 190 petrol stations throughout the country and the actual load weighing system at the Senegambia Bridge. These interventions have helped safeguard consumer welfare and guaranteed value for money. To strengthen and modernize the Weights and Measures Bureau, MOTAI has completed a review of the legal framework for the Weights and Measures Act and drafted a new legal metrology bill expanding the scope of the legal metrology to regulate measurements not only in trade but also measurement devices used in health and safety, law enforcement, and environment management. The review of the bill by the Ministry of Justice is completed, and MOTAI will present it to the August National Assembly for consideration this year after Cabinet approval. This, when enacted, will help mitigate challenges in the regulation of measurements in the areas of trade, health and safety, law enforcement, and environmental management. Transport, works, and infrastructure. The Banjul City Rehabilitation Project continues to make progress, with 95% of the registered roads completed and approximately 84% of those in the additional works completed as of end of September. As part of the project, the Bond Road Pump House was rehabilitated and 2 new 75 kilovolts pumps were installed in August 2022 with a capacity of 2 million liters per hour. The new pumps help evacuate the unprecedented amount of rainfall recorded in the month of July, which resulted in flash flood in some parts of Banjul. As part of government strategy to uplift and upgrade public infrastructure at the regional government level, the construction of governors' offices and residence was initiated, and the governor of North Bank's region's office was successfully completed and handed over. In a bid to effectively manage public buildings, as stated in the new National Public Buildings and Facilities Policy, a bill was drafted and submitted to the National Assembly for consideration and adoption. The government of the Gambia has received loans from the Kuwaiti Fund for Development and the Arab Fund for Economic Development, Arab Bank for Economic Development Badia, and the Islamic Development Bank for the widening of the 22.5 kilometer Batin-Hardin Highway geared towards the cost of the organization of OIC Road Project for the upcoming conference. To help connect the neighboring villages in the main sections of 1 and 2, an additional 16 kilometers has been added to Lot 1 of the Rural Roads Expansion Program. Progress at Lot 2 of the roads construction as of end of September 2022 stands at 63%. The construction of the 86 kilometers Nyomi Hakalan Road is in progress with 48% of the work completed as at the end of September. In the aviation sector, the Gambia International Airlines has procured a high loader with a critical equipment, which is a critical equipment for airport operations, and an airline crew bus to enhance operational efficiency. To ease movement of businesses and leisure between the Gambia and Senegal, the Gambia International Airline is intensifying negotiations with credible airline partners to secure an aircraft that will operate daily flights between the two countries. The domestication will significantly reduce airfares and bring more reliability in flights between Banjul and Dakar. In 2023, GIA will work with the Enhanced Integrated Framework Project through the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Employment to automate the GIA cargo operation system. Once in place, the cargo accounting settlement system will enhance the operational efficiency of cargo handling, airlift and delivery. To support the implementation of the project, GIA intends to procure 2 cargo trucks. To advance our infrastructure agenda, government will leverage on existing fixed assets to finance the creation of new development projects through the issuance of asset-backed financing security instruments. This will also help us mobilize additional resources for development without increasing our debt stock. Petroleum and energy. The Russia-Ukraine war has impacted supply chains and domestic retail prices of fuel in the industry. The war has disrupted the production and trade of several commodities, reduce income and increase the cost of living for the people in the Gambia. The restrictions in logistics and supply chain for the movement of traded commodities, foods and services have had significant effects on prices globally, and as a result, domestic pump price of fuel were increased. In the area of energy, NAWEC continues to face major challenges with increased price of heavy fuel oil and difficulties in access and affordability of spare parts, coupled with dramatic increase in demand for energy as a result of population growth and urbanization. Expansion of the infrastructure and social services, growth in small and medium-sized industries, and the expansion in the tourism hospitality industry sector. To address capacity constraint, government has taken major steps, including a power purchase agreement between NAWEC and Senelec. for the importation of energy. Despite these challenges, the Gambia's energy sector is in the middle of a major transition with significant investment in energy development through the development partner support. These include projects in the electricity restoration and modernization, expansion and access. As a result of this investment, NAWEC has registered major improvement in electricity stability and operational efficiency. At the same time, the OMVG interconnection has started operation, bringing with it the first ever high voltage network in the Gambia and the opportunity to access large quantities of cleaner and lower cost electricity from the West African power pool. The ministry has made substantial efforts towards supporting the mining and quarrying subsectors. The geology department is continuing efforts in geological and mineral resource surveys and assessment with a view to identifying potential occurrence of mineral resources with emphasis on construction art materials required by the construction sector, which have been a key driving force behind the rapid infrastructure development in this country. Regarding the petroleum sector, the petroleum exploration activities, there are currently 6 open blocks, and the goal is to license these blocks in order to achieve strategic policy objective to discover commercial oil deposits. These blocks are promoted through oil and gas conferences, exhibitions and workshops, or through direct engagement with international oil companies. On the downstream, the ministry, together with the Gambia Bureau of Standards Bureau, is currently working on getting a laboratory for testing petroleum products. Social sectors, basic and secondary education. In accordance with its primary goal of ensuring universal access to education, the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education continues to use resources from both the domestic budget and the development partners to provide quality teaching and learning strategies, as well as innovative ways of reaching underserved areas. In this regard, a significant surge in enrollment has been registered at all levels. This includes the Second Chance Education Program, meant to expand opportunities for out-of-school students. To ensure quality education delivery at all education levels, the ministry continues to collaborate with both the Gambia College and the University of the Gambia to support and train teachers and increase the number of qualified teachers across all levels. The ministry has embarked on a comprehensive curriculum review for early childhood development, lower basic and upper basic schools to roll out enrollment to senior secondary schools. As a result of these investments, the ministry recorded a sharp drop in the number of students attaining 0 credits or passes in the West African Senior Secondary Certified Examinations and the Gambia Basic Education Certificate Examinations. While the ministry is making significant gains in both access and quality education, the sector continues to grapple with challenges which require attention. These include human and material resources and the costs associated with school feeding program and improvement in the school improvement grant. This is why this ministry has this medium term. Higher education sector. The Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology continues to intensify efforts towards equitable access to relevant and quality tertiary and higher education. In line with this aspiration, the ministry has implemented programs and activities within its higher education transformation agenda during the year under review. Simultaneously, MOHAS and partners have initiated programs to promote and utilize scientific research and technology development. The ministry has secured funding from the Islamic Development Bank and Badia to complete the second lot of the construction of the University of the Gambia campus at Faraba, Bantan. As Lot 2 is already at 95% completion, Classes are scheduled to move to the new site in Farabab in the second semester of this academic year. The government is complementing these efforts by providing adequate bus services for students and staff. To address employability and Africa's human capital formation construction, the construction of the University of Applied Science, Engineering and Technology, USET, a World Bank funded project, will soon commence. The ministry has procured modern and laboratory equipment, industry standard computers, and 3D printers to promote efficiency among students. To address youth migration within and outside the borders of the country, rehabilitation works at skill centers across the country are near completion. These skill centers will have accommodation facilities for students and staff and will run courses that are responsive to the needs of the country and the local communities. More sites have been identified, one of which will specifically focus on agricultural, agribusiness skills. A higher education financing model is being developed, and as part of the strategies identified, the ministry will pilot its first student loan scheme next year. This is one of the surest ways of allowing every brilliant youth to pursue higher education ambition to higher heights. The Gambia College Annex at Basse in the Upper River region is already producing qualified teachers for schools in that part of the country and has almost addressed the posting menace the education sector has faced over the years. To ensure all post-secondary institutions comply with the same standards, eventually addressing the mismatch issues in our education system, the National Accreditation and Quality Assurance Authority has validated the National Qualifications Framework. The ministry will present a draft bill of this framework for ratification shortly. In promoting research and innovation, the ministry has validated the research policy, which will soon be launched. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought to light the need for digitalization, especially in the education sector. The ministry is therefore working on a digitalization strategy and will work closely with the ministry responsible for digital transformation to ensure e-learning as well as digital libraries and e-education management permeate our delivery structures. The health sector. In the wake of the current global crisis that have caused both health and economic havoc around the world, including the Gambia, the government, through the Ministry of Health, continues to commit itself to the provision of quality care services which is accessible, affordable, and responsive to the needs of the population. Over the period under review, the sector successfully expanded and developed good healthcare services through improved infrastructure, personnel, and supplies on a reformed health financing landscape. Additionally, key health indicators have improved, notably maternal and child health, skilled birth attendance, postnatal care, and nutrition. On the maternal and child health services, significant gains are registered during the past years as infant mortality rate and under 5 mortality rate reduced significantly, while the percentage of deliveries conducted by skilled birth attendants in health facilities increased. Access to services in maternal and child health considerably improved. The sector's introduction of the Gambian National Health Insurance Scheme is a major achievement. The act to establish the scheme became effective in November 2021 to particularly benefit the poor and the vulnerable while serving as a social safety net. On the training of healthcare personnel, the Gambia government now offers postgraduate training at Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, while the UTG also offers health-related programs at bachelor's level. As part of efforts to revitalize and implement the concept of primary health care in the country, the primary health care unit at the ministry witnessed a significant increase in the primary health care in key villages. The implementation of the strategy paid off with significant improvement in the health status of the people. The development of the Civil Registration and Vital Statistics Bill 2022 is ongoing and will be submitted to the National Assembly when finalized. This bill will create universal access to health services. Currently, HIV and AIDS services are provided in almost all the health facilities across the country. On healthcare infrastructure, there are a wide range of construction works in progress to expand the services throughout the country. Amongst them is the construction of a National Emergency Treatment Center, National Laboratory Center, Blood Transfusion Center in Farato, and other new health facilities. The construction of a modern waste treatment center in Farato has been completed and launched. The ministry plans to undertake refurbishment, maintenance, and construction of health facilities in both rural Gambia and urban Gambia as well. Construction of a National Diagnostic Imaging Center at Farato, neonatal intensive care unit at Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, and the doctor's accommodation at Biam General Hospital are of importance. On public health research, the country has consented to the implementation of several international health accords on health research, and the Gambia has seen an unprecedented increase in advance in healthcare research and delivery over the past few years. The ministry has established a partnership with Health Strategy and Delivery Foundation based in Nigeria to help the sector develop research priorities. As demographic changes and the population becomes better informed with growing expectations, the need to provide quality care that is responsive to the needs of the population becomes a necessity. This has been clearly stated in the National Health Policy, which targets the acceleration of quality health services to achieve universal coverage. Children, Gender and Social Welfare Ministry. The Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare launched the Women Enterprise Fund in October 2019 as part of the NDP flagship projects, with the objective of strengthening the capabilities and capacities of 35,000 women and girls in micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, which is entirely funded by the government of the Gambia. From commencement to date, the Women Enterprise Fund has trained 24,000 women and disbursed $21 million to 257 women groups across the country. In addition, the United Nations Capital Development Fund, in collaboration with the ministry, is preparing technical and financial support to enhance capacity of the ministry to implement innovative financial solutions that empower women. Since its inception, a training of trainers of 100 female staff was conducted on financial literacy, followed by a rollout campaign to 53 constituencies. A UNESCO-funded project on female traditional circumcisers through the promotion of alternative ways for self-actualization and self-sustenance, supported by the ministry in strengthening the capacities of 75 traditional female circumcisers to find alternative ways for self-actualization, self-esteem, and self-sustenance through business skills development and startup support. They were trained and provided with materials as startup capital and in kind. The Fistula program through the ECOWAS Gender and Development Project has been launched to support the treatment and integration of women and girls who are victims of the condition in the Gambia through BAFRO, a local NGO. The components of the Fistula program include sensitization, treatment, rehabilitation, and reintegration. The project has assessed over 100 participants, out of which 85 were repaired, 10 integrated, and 5 underwent repeated surgeries. The ministry has strengthened the National Referral Mechanism for Young Migrants. The National Referral Mechanism is a guide to use to support categories of migrants. The objective of the national referral mechanism is to strengthen the institutional, technical, and operational capacities of government and NGOs, agencies working in identifying, family tracing, return and reintegration assistance to vulnerable migrants. The ministry and other stakeholders, including development partners, have successfully developed standard operating procedures, manual, SOP, for the management of vulnerable children. The purpose of the SOP manual is to help improve the quality and consistency of service countrywide for victims or survivors and standardize the response to gender-based violence, sexual violence, and violence against adults, children, and others who are vulnerable or have disabilities. A training of trainers as well as a step-down training for service providers were also conducted at all levels. Honorable Speaker, we now look on to the Youth and Sports Ministry. The government of the Gambia, through the Ministry of Youth and Sports, continues to prioritize youth empowerment and sports development. The COVID-19 and Russia-Ukraine war have resulted to constraints on the ministry to meet its demand in terms of service delivery and provision of goods and services. The National Enterprise Development Initiative, through funding from International Organization for Migration, has trained 614 migrant returnees on business development and career guidance across the country. With funding by the government, 300 youth and women entrepreneurs were supported through the mentoring and coaching, advisory services for the sustainability of their businesses. In addition, through the Gambia Inclusive and Resilient Agricultural Value Chain project under the Ministry of Agriculture, 20 youth and women were identified and supported with fencing, borehole, irrigation, and farm inputs. The National Youth Council, with the support from development partners, carried out activities including renovation of youth centers, training of youths and migrants, returnees, and hosting of the National Youth Connect Summit 2022, which attracted many young people across the country. The ministry plans to implement the mandatory one-year national service program and soft skill training such as mobile repairs, website, satellite, and electronic repairs. The ministry will also continue the rehabilitation and renovation of the stadium, National Stadium, to meet the required standards for the hosting of the international matches by March 2023. Additionally, the ministry plans to expand and strengthen the youth agricultural service and micro-processing centers project to more regions, establish general merchandise project as a revenue stream, provide microfinance support to youth and women entrepreneurs, and work with partners to build a regional enterprise training, business training and center and hub for the young women. Cross-cutting sectors. The Ministry of Interior. In the last 5 years, the ministry has embarked on a number of reforms aimed at making sure the security services are more professional and responsive in their service delivery. For this reason, the Ministry of Interior has secured land for the construction of the Ministry of Interior office complex. The Gambia Commission for Refugees, in collaboration with National Agency for Legal Aids, sensitized refugees on their rights, access to legal services, and local integration procedures and opportunities. Records have revealed that the trend of drug abuse is consistently on the increase, resulting in many of the youths experiencing drug-induced mental illnesses. To tackle this, the Drug Law Enforcement Agency intends to implement a rehabilitation program for victims of drug abuse to trigger a national shift from approaching drug abuse as a criminal justice issue to a public health problem. The Gambia Fire and Rescue Services has received 6 fire engines from 56 partners through the Carnegie Municipal Council based in the United Kingdom. The construction of the Bajakunda Fire and Rescue Service Station has been completed and is fully operational. The Gambia Prison Services, through the intervention of the government and partners, has trained 15 officers and 50 inmates on different skills, construction of staff quarters and rehabilitation of prisons in Janjanbureh. The government of the Gambia established the Ministry of Information, following the decision to decouple the Ministry of Information and Communication Infrastructure, primarily to address democratic pluralism and safeguard the fundamental rights and freedoms guaranteed under the 1997 Constitution. The ministry is working with partners and civil society organizations to revitalize and decentralize the rural communities, information centers across the country. This will promote social cohesion and equitable socio-economic development outcomes. The government, through a collaboration with the media and the civil society organization, has enacted the Access to Information Bill. The enactment and the presidential assent of the Access to Information Act 2021 symbolizes a complete departure from the history of adversarial media-government relation to an era that proactively seeks to anchor symbiotic collaboration, consultation, and inclusive governance. As a next step, the ministry is working towards developing an ATI implementation strategy framework. In addition to the current endeavors, the ministry is working on a plan to create a modern media press center to empower the actors in the information value chain and address press freedom and open governance initiatives. The Justice Ministry. The government, through the Ministry of Justice, invested in the transitional justice process, especially the Constitutional Review Commission and the Truth and Reconciliation and Reparation Commission. These two processes, together with local and international cases and arbitrations matters, were the main focus of the ministry. The TRRC completed its public hearing, submitted its report, and government released a white paper in May 2022. Currently, the ministry is at a stage of developing and implementing the recommendation of the TRRC white paper. The government of the Gambia is fully committed to the implementation of the white paper, and as such will establish the necessary structures for the prosecution of individuals adversely mentioned in the Jammeh-era crimes. This will include the creation of a special prosecutor's office and a special investigations unit, finalization of the treaty between the government of the Gambia and ECOWAS Commission with regards to the cooperation and establishment of internationalized court for the prosecution of human rights violations committed, establishment of Victims Reparation Commission for the payment of reparations emanating from the TRRC report, and an enactment of legislation and legislative review for the establishment of an internationalized court. To ensure transparency and accountability, the Office of the Curator is part of a pilot scheme of the IFMIS system. Plans are currently underway to put the necessary equipment in place to get the system up and running. The companies register plan to open offices in Basse with a view to decentralized registration of companies and also with a view of easy access. Efforts are also underway to upgrade the IT infrastructure to make the system more efficient. The office intends to embark on rigorous inspections to ensure compliance and increase revenue. The Office of the Ombudsman. One of the Ombudsman's priority areas under the NDP is decentralization. To that effect, the government's approval for a new Ombudsman's office in the Central River region is being implemented. Additionally, the Office of the Ombudsman has proposed the opening of a new office in the West Coast region, which will mark the completion of its presence in all regions. To strengthen its operations and actualize its broader mandate to the public, the Office of the Ombudsman has appointed investigators who will be posted to the various regional offices across the country. In 2023, The work of the office will continue to be largely characterized by routine activities in terms of investigation of complaints, visiting prisons and detention centers, as well as creating the needed awareness on the roles and functions of the office. Furthermore, the Office of the Ombudsman intends to deepen its work in the area of asset declaration, in line with the Section 223 of the Constitution as anti-corruption strategy to fight illicit enrichment in public office. Public Service, Administrative Reforms and Policy Ministry. In a bid to create a merit-based system for promotion, training and development, and to strengthen effective service delivery within the civil service, the Ministry of Public Service, Administration and Reforms has implemented a robust performance management system and also an effective and efficient recruitment system, e-recruitment, within the civil service. Earlier this year, the ministry led new initiatives through the Common Country Assessment Facility to forge a new cooperation framework that will replace UNDAF as the modus operandi designed to chart the strategic direction and results expected from this cooperation. With the mandate of maintaining an up-to-date repository of sector policies and to improve the accessibility of government policies for easy reference through the UNDP Economic Management Project, an online policy database that compiles the summaries of all sector policies into a compendium of government policies was built. The ministry also actively tracked key process indicators such as medium-term or end-term evaluation of policy has been completed or whether an expired policy has been updated. The ministry, in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, is coordinating the ongoing NDP SDG coordination mechanism project funded by UN Resident Coordinator's Office to interface all government data points to a dashboard. This will provide guidelines on how government can address coordination gaps and growing challenges, streamline coordination and reporting, and develop and adopt policies and systems that guide planners and decision makers on the level of progress on the NDP SDGP program. The ministry led the coordination of the MSDG 5th state in the National Forum to support Gambian diaspora participation in national development initiatives in partnership with other stakeholders. In addition, the ministry led the implementation program of the Governance and Leadership Project 2020 to 2022 that seeks to strengthen inclusive citizen engagement for more accountable governance in the Gambia. The ministry, with support from the Commonwealth Secretariat, is working on reinstitutionalizing a performance management system in the civil service that will hold the MDAs accountable for what they are mandated to execute on an annual basis. The rule will be for all MDAs to enter into some form of performance contracting with the Office of the President that sets clear guidelines as to how they would be evaluated. Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Wildlife. The ministry is continuously working with local, regional and international partners in trying to keep our environment and natural resources intact, and has been leading the resource mobilization process for the betterment of our country. All these activities and strategies are geared towards the achievement of the goals of the NDP. The ministry has advanced in the preparation of the West African Coastal Area Resilient Investment Program to the tune of $46 million. This project is aimed to address coastal erosion, drainage systems, and building resilience in the communities of the country. The Ministry of Environment, through the Ecosystem-Based Adaptation Project, is at an advanced stage on the construction of 8 multi-purpose centers and a central processing facility at Brikamaba in CRR for the processing of forest and agroforestry natural resources products for value addition. The facilities, which will provide employment opportunities and increase income generation for livelihood support and to better preserve natural products, is set for operation before the end of the year. On the restoration of mangrove ecosystem, the project has planted 200 hectares of mangrove ecosystem to support the improvement of the marine ecosystem, which could be used for carbon trading in the near future. In the area of biodiversity conservation, the government of the Gambia has significantly invested in its human and financial resources in order to reverse the trend of biodiversity loss. This was partially achieved through the partnership with development agencies such as UNDP, GEF, and NGOs. All these initiatives have laid down the foundation of a solid and sustained institution responsible for biodiversity conservation in the country. The ministry has engaged the Department of Parks and Wildlife Management and other relevant stakeholders to initiate the reintroduction and restocking of wildlife species by promoting public-private partnerships. The ministry has finalized and validated guidelines for the private sector involvement in natural resource management and exploring bilateral relationships with other countries to facilitate the capture, transfer, and relocation of some extinct wildlife species into our various parks and reserves in the country. The Ministry of Lands and Regional Government. This ministry, through its various departments, has made significant achievements over the recent past. Some of the achievements include capacity building and strengthening of the decentralized structures, improvement in city planning and management, and a move towards digitalization. The program for capacity building and strengthening of the decentralized structures aims to further strengthen the institutional capabilities of the decentralized structures, particularly village and ward development communities, local councils, and community-based organizations in all the regions. This will address strategic pillars 1 and 4 of the NDP 2018 to 2021. With regard to Banjul, the ministry has embarked on the following initiative. 1, the development of a land use plan to improve the management of the use of land for residential versus commercial purpose. 2, the study of a drainage system which will facilitate the effective mitigation of flash floods during the rainy season, and a planned demolition of dilapidated structures identified within the city to protect lives and property. On the digitalization, the ministry has also commenced the process of digitizing maps in order to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of land management. Currently, the ministry uses coordinate system to geo-reference land use report applications, which has minimized double allocation and land dispute. Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The government of the Gambia, under the leadership of His Excellency the President of the Republic, would continue to undertake initiatives to bring about international actions through proactive diplomacy that advance national interests of the country and her citizens, including those in the diaspora, as well as to make a contribution to building a world community in which there is enduring peace and security, expanding freedom, and lasting prosperity. The government's engagement with multilateral and bilateral partners over the years yielded fruits for the country. This can easily be seen in the recent impactful engagement and conclusions with bilateral and multilateral partners, including the United Nations Peace Building Commission and other UN agencies, AU, ECOWAS, OIC, IMF, World Bank, African Development Bank, Islamic Development Badia, Saudi Fund for Development, amongst others. As a country, our strategic interests in terms of geopolitics, economic, cultural, and composition of our diaspora, and wider global engagement have changed over the years. Hence, the infrastructure needed to serve the new paradigm shift also needs to change, both in terms of structures and resources. In the light of this, the government's plan to build a highly responsive, effective, efficient, professional, and career-driven foreign service that would be better suited for the purpose. To achieve this, ongoing reforms will be expedited, and initiatives and other reforms will be undertaken geared towards institutional strengthening with emphasis on capacity building and improved service conditions for the foreign service officers. Policy documents such as the Foreign Service Bill will be finalized and submitted to this August National Assembly in 2023. It is of national interest for the government to own the properties it occupies in strategically located foreign embassies, missions. This is of utmost importance, especially in countries of long-term interest. This is intended to bring about cost savings in the long term, and the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs will work closely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to implement this next year. Data and statistics. The Gambia Social Registry is a consolidated database containing key information about current and potential beneficiaries of the social protection programs. The exercise has so far been completed in 36 districts. These include all districts of URR, LRR, CRR, and North Bank region, and 5 districts in West Coast region. Funds have been acquired from the World Bank to cover the remaining 4 districts of West Coast region, and the listing of structures and households is in progress. The state of food security and nutrition in the world is an annual flagship report jointly prepared by FAO, IFAD, UNICEF, World Food Programme, and WHO to inform on the progress towards ending hunger, achieving food security, and improving nutrition, and to provide in-depth analysis on key challenges for achieving this goal in the context of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The report targets a wide audience, including policymakers, international organizations, academic institutions, and the general public. In order to adequately report on SDG 2, the Bureau, in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, conducted a food security and nutrition survey in September-October 2022, jointly funded by World Food Programme and FAO. To improve quality and timeliness, the Bureau is conducting a digital census in 2023 as per the requirements of the United Nations Principles and Recommendations for Population and Housing Censuses Revision 3. In the same light, the Bureau will conduct the 2023 population census as well as the economic census and the integrated business enterprise survey to rebase the GDP from 2013 to 2022 for a more reliable estimation of national economy. The broad objective of the Labor Force Survey 2022 is to obtain comprehensive data on the status of the national labor market. The survey provides data on socioeconomic characteristics of the labor market, informal sector activities and training needs of the labor market, educational levels for use in planning, policy implementation, monitoring and evaluation of government programs aimed at improving the livelihood of the population and especially the vulnerable groups. The household listing was conducted in August 2022 and the main field work will begin in December 2022 and expected to be completed in January 2023. This survey is jointly funded by the Government of the Gambia, UNDP, ITC, and ILO. The Bureau plans to embark on the development and compilation of quarterly gross domestic product for the first time in the Gambia. This exercise began in March 2021, and the preliminary estimates from 2013 to 2022 will be published by the end of the fourth quarter of 2023. The objective of this exercise is to provide a comprehensive assessment on the performance of the Gambia's economy on the short term, as well as to establish comparability of economic statistics across the region. In 2023, the Bureau plans to rebase the Consumer Price Index from January 2019 to January 2022 using the 2019-2020 Integrated Household Survey data and disseminate the key findings of the 2020 to 2021 Integrated Household Survey. Now turn on to the revenue administration. The Gambia Revenue Authority has faced challenges in revenue collection as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war so far this year, but ongoing reforms have contributed positively towards performance. Some of the notable reforms carried out this year include the rollout of the enhanced version of the GAM TaxNet in all tax offices across the country, increased efficiency of the withholding tax regime, data matching of third-party information, increased tax audit coverage and yield, improved tax areas collection and management, increased enforcement exercises, and improved taxpayer services and education programs, among other interventions. Additionally, the authority launched the Ascuda World System, an online platform, at all the major border posts as part of efforts to modernize and digitalize the revenue collection. The Ascuda World offers a web-based platform for importers, exporters, or other agents or their agents to log into the system from the comfort of their homes or offices, make declarations, assess themselves, and make payments at any commercial bank without the need to visit any GRA office. For easy understanding of the system, the authority has drafted the tax agent regulations and Ascuda World regulations. Recent reports indicated that the Ascuda World has greatly improved the collection efforts. In other areas of the digitalization, work is ongoing in the implementation of an integrated tax administrative system for the administration of domestic tax, migration from EPICO 9 to 10 in line with the government's public finance management reform agenda, as part of efforts to integrate risk management in all GRA operations and activities. The authority procured a new enterprise risk management system and software. Review of the implementation of the revised 2022 budget. The outturn of the expenditure and net lending is projected to reach 30.7 billion against the revised budget of 31.1. In comparative terms, the end year projection is estimated at 412 million below the revised budget. This is mostly as a result of lower performance of the domestic revenue collections. On the debt service, the end of the year projection of 3.4 billion will overshoot the revised budget by 442 million. This is mostly relating to the increase in both the domestic and external debt service due to the appreciation of the United States dollar and the increasing cost of domestic debt. Personnel cost at the end of 2022 is estimated to record 386 million below the revised budget of 5.7 billion compared to a projected yearly outturn of 5.3 billion. Honorable Speaker, we now focus on the medium-term growth outlook. Recovery and growth prospects over the medium term will be subdued as conditions remain precarious as a result of the conflict. With the economies across the world being negatively impacted by the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the global growth projections are being revised downwards, the medium term promises to be challenging. Although the West grapples with the effect of conflict on their real incomes, tourist arrivals for 2022 to 2023 tourist season has improved, signaling positive moves towards recovery in the service sector. Performance in the industry sector is expected to decline slightly as most of the subsectors are directly or indirectly affected by the supply chain disruptions associated with the manufacturing and construction of inputs, which are usually imported from war zones. Due to the uncertainty in the prospect for the industry and trade, the economy will rely heavily on other productive sectors to perform as projected in the medium term. The risk of a poor rainy season in the medium term could also exacerbate volatility, hence recovery efforts must be premised on a strong commitment to a medium-term policy reform to ensure resilience. The agricultural sector is expected to continue on a steady path to recovery after the downturn in 2021, with the growth rate projected to increase to 6.5% in 2023 and averaging 5.3% by 2022. This projection is largely on the back of two factors. First is the improved investment efficiency in the agricultural projects, coupled with increased private sector participation in rice and vegetable farming, and second, the increase in fish production, which by 2022 represent more than 50% of total agricultural production. The increased use of Gambia Strategic Review Board for project screening and selection will further strengthen efficiency in agricultural projects, which in the past suffered from gross inefficiency in public investment management. Fish output is also expected to perform well over the medium term. While the industry continues to be the main growth driver, its path to recovery from the pandemic has suffered yet another setback from the conflict, coupled with some major projects under construction coming to an end in 2022. As a result, the growth is expected to hit 6.7 in 2023 and remain on an average rate of 6.5 until 2026. With the OIC nearing, the construction of roads and other infrastructure for the conference should be completed in 2023, signaling an expected slowdown in investment in public construction thereafter. Similarly, private construction also faces the risk of a slowdown, as we have already started experiencing a decrease in the flow of private remittances as cost of living in the West increases. Although the slowdown in construction will reduce sand mining, the mining and quarrying subsector is expected to remain on a decent path in the medium term due to the increase in export of heavy mineral concentrates. The service sector is expected to register a subdued recovery over the medium term from the effects of the pandemic and the war. Growth is projected at 3.8% in 2023, ramping to 5.9% in 2026, with hotels and restaurants and wholesale and retail trade being the main drivers of recovery. Tourism is expected to recover from COVID-19 disruption by 2026, when the arrivals of tourists will match the arrivals of the 2019 pre-COVID numbers. On the fiscal front, the domestic revenue collection is projected to increase from 15.9 billion in 2022 to 16.9 billion in 2023. This positive growth trend is expected to remain consistent over the medium term, reaching an average of 13% in nominal terms from 2023 to 2026. This reflects robust revenue mobilization efforts and the implementation of the GRA reform agenda geared towards improving compliance and expanding the tax base. Through support from the World Bank, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, in collaboration with GRA, has been working closely with a consultancy firm to carry out tax expenditure assessment, which will lay the foundation for a comprehensive tax expenditure policy. This process has been completed, and the staff of the ministry, GRA, and other key stakeholders have been trained on the tools used in tax expenditure analysis. As part of the reforms, the ministry has established a Revenue and Tax Policy Directorate to handle all tax-related issues going forward. And this is all geared towards increasing the domestic resources over the medium term. Total grants are anticipated to increase from 10.7 billion in 2022 to 14.6 billion in 2023. It is expected that the total grants will increase along the projection period. The budget support grants will reach 2.9 billion by 2026 from 2.7 billion expected in 2023. On project grants, this will move from 11.8 billion in 2023 to 14.2 billion by 2026. The increment in project grants reflect the potential of new investment projects that will support the rapid growth of the economy in the medium term, despite the adverse circumstances in the international market. The 2023 budget support have already been discussed with the development partners and they have passed the test for inclusion in the budget. The total government expenditure is projected to increase from 31.2 billion in 2022 to 35.4 billion in 2023, and over the medium term is expected to increase gradually to the tune of 42.8 billion. The projected increase in total expenditure is largely attributable to an anticipated increase in capital expenditure due to the ongoing projects, urban roads such as the Kanifing Brufut, and rural roads such as the Nyomi Hakalang Sabah Sanjal, and the expansion of the Batin Hardin Highway for the OIC Summit, and the new salary increase applied from 2022 to 2026. As economic conditions remain fragile and vulnerable to shocks, the most recent debt sustainability analysis conducted by IMF assessed the country to remain at a high risk of debt distress with limited borrowing space. This requires continuous and coordinated policy efforts to lessen the risk. The current medium-term debt strategy objective is encouraging for the strengthening of financing from both external concessional and longer-term domestic debt instruments to improve the debt indicator thresholds and subsequently result in a more sustainable public debt path. The salient features of the 2023 budget. 1, the budget reflects an increase in revenue by 18% on the back of improvements in the revenue administration and collection through digitalization of the GRA and the Senegambia Bridge, among others. Increase in expenditure by 14%, mostly attributable to increases in capital expenditure on key infrastructure projects in both rural and urban Gambia. The budget deficit in 2023 as a percentage of GDP is estimated to decline to 3% compared to 4.5% in 2022, and therefore result to a reduction in the net domestic borrowing by 52% compared to the previous year. Increased allocation to the agricultural sector by 69% compared to the 2022. The social sectors such as education, health, and agriculture spending accounts for a third of the budget. Capital expenditure to enhance the infrastructure base will constitute 35% of the budget to build the infrastructure and capital base for economic development. Medium-term policy reforms. To ensure fiscal sustainability and improve conditions in terms of revenues and expenditure management, the following reforms will be implemented. 1, development of a travel policy for the entire public service to ensure value for money. 2, extension of the performance contract to all state-owned enterprise with a view to improving their financial viability, service delivery, and reducing fiscal risk to the budget. 3, strengthening of the public investment program through institutionalization of medium-term public investment programs for all sectors and ensuring all public investments pass the Gambia Strategic Review Board selection criteria. Restructuring and rationalization of subvented entities. Development of a domestic resource mobilization strategy to enhance revenue collection. Development of a foreign service policy with the aim of rationalizing foreign missions. Finalization of the vehicle policy and commencement of its implementation as a matter of urgency in order to rationalize expenditure on the purchase of vehicles, fuel, and maintenance. These will be managed to address the concern of the most vulnerable elements, particularly the existing drivers. Review of the vehicle management plan by Riders for Health to rationalize cost. Fiduciary elements of the donor intervention projects will be housed at the Ministry of Finance, while the program implementation of these projects will be housed at the aligned ministries. Revenue measures. The following revenue measures are proposed for next year. 1, increase in excise tax on tobacco. Specific excise tax on cigarettes, cigars, and cigarillos. Current rate $30 per pack will increase to $35 per pack. Environmental tax on cigarette and cigars, currently $3.22, will increase to $5.22. Excise tax on all tobacco products, $399 per kilo to $420 per kilo. Environmental tax on all tax products, $185 currently, will increase to $200 per kilo in 2023. Revision of the immigration fees of non-Gambians in line with regional benchmarks. There are 14 elements. ECOWAS cards, ECOWAS ID cards, currently 400 will remain the same. Non-Gambian ID, currently 650 will remain the same. Permit A for ECOWAS, currently is 1,850, will increase to 3,000. Permit A, non-ECOWAS, currently 1,850, will increase to 3,000. Permit B, ECOWAS, currently 1,850, will increase to 2,500. Permit B, non-ECOWAS, currently 3,100, will increase to 5,000. 7 alien card, currently 1,500, will increase to 2,500. Entry visa, currently 3,000, will increase to 7,000. Entry clearance, currently 3,000, will increase to 7,000. Machine readable passport, currently 1,000, will increase to 3,000. Biometric passport, currently 500, will remain the same. Extension, currently 1,000, will remain the same. ETC, currently 250, will remain the same. Naturalization and registration, ECOWAS nationals, currently 5,000, will increase to 25,000. Non-ECOWAS nationals, currently 15,000, will increase to 75,000. Introduction of an ad valorem tax of 5% on used car tires. Revision of duty on waivers on duty revision of duty waiver application fees. Returning diplomats, currently 2,500, will increase to 5,000. Diplomatic missions, embassies, currently 2,000, will increase to 10,000. Donor-funded projects, currently 5,000, will increase to 15,000. Introduction of 5% environmental tax on second-hand goods, materials which do not currently attract environmental tax. Security levy of 6% on all insurance premiums. Monies will be collected by the insurance companies. Introduction of a deduction of rental income tax at source for all commercial rental properties. Increase in the expatriate quota tax for non-ECOWAS residents from 40,000 to 50,000. The expatriate quota board will be strengthened to ensure proper monitoring. Honorable Speaker, in conclusions, let me conclude by drawing the attention of this August Assembly to the very challenging and unprecedented position we find ourselves in as we draw the curtains on 2022 fiscal year and prepare for 2023. As a result of the back-to-back shocks to the economies across the world, global economic prospects have worsened in the recent past, and this has unfortunately trickled down to the domestic economy. As we work tirelessly to surmount these challenges, it is worthy to note that the outlook remains grim. This position has forced us to look inwards, and in so doing, we have come to the realization that we must build resilience from within if we are to weather this storm. Therefore, as tough as these challenges may be, we acknowledge and fully embrace the opportunities they come with. It is therefore a time for a serious commitment to reforms in critical areas to reinforce macroeconomic sustainability in the medium term in order to increase revenue and ensure value for money in expenditures. This includes innovation in all sectors of the economy, especially by leveraging technology to digitalize and transform our economy, in strong partnership with the private sector. We believe in local solutions to local problems, and these unprecedented times have made this crystal clear. The baseline economic scenario presented here describes a fragile path for public finance in the short and medium term, where serious reforms must be made to achieve sustainable economic growth, reduce vulnerability to external shocks, and ensure budget support grants in the medium term. From the government side, a strong commitment to fiscal discipline across all MDAs is crucial to reducing expenditures and a committing to constraints in the near term. In 2019, government instituted a policy on the management safeguards of revenue through controls in granting tax expenditures, exemptions in government concession contracts. To this end, this is a reminder that the government will not honor any tax exemption granted by MDAs in concessions or contracts without prior consultation with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. Furthermore, all exemptions of direct taxes in government concession or contracts will be re-examined and terminated where they are not in compliance with existing tax laws. The government remains committed to intensify resource mobilization starting from 2023 for the Recovery Focus, NDP, and Vision 2050. This will serve as anchors for the development efforts in the medium term and inform the public investment program as well as regional development strategies. The recent shocks to the global economy have brought to light the simple fact that the world has become a global village. With that said, the urgent need for stronger collaboration to tackle our shared challenges and get on the path to recovery cannot be overemphasized. To this end, the government continues to benefit from the unwavering support of development partners in tackling key challenges and advancing our national development agenda. On that note, and on behalf of the government and the entire people of the population of the Gambia, I will use this occasion to register our profound gratitude to all our development partners for remaining resolute in their support to our development agenda. It is with deep appreciation that I mention the World Bank Group, the International Monetary Fund, the European Union, UN agencies, the GIZ, International Trade Center, Enabel, the African Development Bank, African Union, Islamic Development Bank Group, the OPEC Fund for International Development, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the Commonwealth, and the Arab Bank for Economic Development, ECOWAS, Red Cross, MRC Holland Foundation, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi Fund for Economic Development, Kingdom of Morocco, Turkey, the State of Kuwait, and the Kuwaiti Fund, Russia, the People's Republic of China, Japan, South Korea, the Republic of France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, among others. I would also like to thank His Excellency the President Adama Barrow for his tremendous support for the difficult financial position we have been compelled to take this year. The Ministry is in no doubt assured of the continued support from not only the Office of the President, but of the entire Cabinet as we embark on what promises to be a challenging year. To emerge from this period with macroeconomic stability and resilience, we must be willing to make sacrifices. And I have no doubt that we can count on the required support from all Gambians. The year 2023 will be challenging, as all economic forecasts indicate. However, tough times call for redoubling of efforts to ensure that we build the resilience and capability to weather the storm. The implementation of the 2023 budget will require all and sundry to observe stringent fiscal rules, mobilize domestic resources to deliver the development aspiration of the Gambian country. On that note, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, for your brilliant delivery of your budget speech. Honorable members, any seconder? Honorable member for Old Yundum and Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to second the motion. Thank you.
Honorable members, pursuant to Order 87.4 of the Standing Orders of the National Assembly, I will adjourn the debate on the Appropriation Bill 2023 until Monday, 5th December 2022, to enable members to study the bill. But before doing so, honorable members, I wish to register thanks and gratitude to the Honorable Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs for ably tabling the 2023 appropriation bill as required of him by the Constitution. The Honorable Minister did set out government's physical and economic development plans and programs for the fiscal year 2023. On that note, honorable members, I wish to take this opportunity also on behalf of both sides of the Assembly, and indeed on my own behalf, to extend our thanks and appreciation to the following distinguished guests and invitees for gracing this important sitting of the National Assembly. Honorable Cabinet Ministers, honorable members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, permanent secretaries and heads of institutions, staff of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, senior government officials, service chiefs, religious leaders, members of the press, and all other invited guests and the general public. On that note, honorable members, I now put the question: be it resolved that this August Assembly do stand adjourned until Monday, 5th December 2022 at 10 a.m. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Not in favor, please say no. The ayes have it. This Assembly now stands adjourned until Monday, 5th December 2022 at 10 a.m. prompt for the debate and consideration of the Appropriation Bill 2023. Thank you.
Hello, we've just been watching a lengthy speech there. You're watching QTV. We were just at the National Assembly and we heard the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs present his budget speech to the Assembly. Now the National Assembly have 14 days according to the Constitution to consider it. We have slightly shorter time to consider it, and there was quite a lot to consider. I've just calculated that I've wrote 25 pages of notes. So you'll have to bear with us as we try and decipher. But I have two very, very good guests here who can exactly help us to do that. To my immediate left, I have Dr. Keba-Jame, who is at UTG teaching economics, and somebody who is more than well placed to actually decipher some of it. And to my immediate right, I have somebody whose CV is as long or longer than my arm, and that's Mr. Lamin Mane. He's studied at Harvard. He's also been in the UN system, and of course he's worked in government as well. And so, gentlemen, as I said there at the intro, very, very lengthy speech, essentially a kind of report card for the economy and for the ministries. Some of the things were not unexpected. We expected the Ukraine war to come up quite a lot, and we expected resource mobilization to come up quite a lot. We say, you know, we're a tax-based economy. So, if I can go to you first, Dr. Keba-Jame, a few takeaways from that speech. As I said, quite a lot to delve into, but what were your immediate takeaways from that?
Thank you very much. I think it has really been a very lengthy speech, and we have so much things to say today. Yeah, but the Honorable Minister started by giving an overview of how the global economy is working and its impact on the Gambian economy.
Sure.
You know, from the Ukraine war, COVID-19, to the inflation and pressure in Europe, and its impact on the Gambia.
Sure.
So he did highlight that the government reacted to two main streams. You have fiscal policy through the Ministry of Finance, and then the central bank through monetary policies.
Sure.
So given these two approaches, there is a little bit contradiction, but I don't know how long it will be sustainable, because on the fiscal side,
Sure.
they are conducting an expansionary fiscal policy.
Yeah, sure.
On the monetary side, they are conducting a contractionary monetary policy.
Yes.
So how sustainable
Quite.
these dynamics will be?
Yes, yes.
That is something that we will discuss most likely.
Certainly.
Yeah, and then the minister also did discuss how the Gambia can also respond, because most of this inflationary pressure is because Gambia, we import almost everything.
Sure.
And then we export little.
Sure.
So he did explain that the agricultural sector will be one of the main priority areas for the government.
So before we delve too deeply, our colleague Eso Nyasi is actually at the National Assembly, and I believe we have him on the line and we can go to him. Eso Nyasi, are you there and can you hear me? And Sumana Eso Nyasi, I believe you have managed to get some of the Assembly members to speak to you. Over to you, Eso. I'm not sure whether, okay. I'm not sure whether Eso can hear me, but if I can come back to you. If I could, I just cut you off in mid-sentence. My apologies, you were talking about agriculture.
It's okay, yeah, he did say that the government is going to put a lot of attention on the agricultural industry sector.
Yes. I gather we can hear Eso. Eso, apologies for that, but this always happens with technology. Over to you, and over to you at the National Assembly. Eso, it's over to you. I'm not sure whether Eso can hear me. I can see him, and yeah, apologies for that. This is one of these things that technology always seems to thwart us, our best intentions, but we'll try and get Eso again, because I think it's vital that we get some reaction from some of the people who were there in this. Okay, now for one more time, Eso Nyasi, I'm going to try and go over to you. And Sumana Eso Nyasi, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ade.
Thank you.
So yes, I mean, following the minister's, budget speech for the year 2023, I have here with me Honorable Swaibu, for Woodley East, who is of course a friend of the media. We're always happy to talk to you. But Honorable, what do you make of the minister's budget speech?
Yes, I think I have listened to the minister's speech, but I have to also read the speech for me to digest certain information that is there. Yeah. But by and large, what I have heard so far, I believe that the minister is thinking of a direction so that the country can have a lift-off. Because from COVID-19, the damage that it has caused, the impact that it has caused on the country is a very negative impact, which has brought down the economy. And now, before we recover from that, we are also knocked by what we call the Ukraine-Russia war, which does not affect only that region, but it affects the whole world because of the petroleum that is produced in those areas. And then the impact of the sanctions that were done to Russia, which has also affected other parts of Europe that are also helping other developing countries. I think these are all crises which we must accept. But at the same time, we should not forget that we also have a responsibility to develop our economy independently in such a way that even if those crises do come, they will have a limited impact on us, rather than we dependent completely on external donation. Which, if it is affected, it has greater impact on us than it should have.
In his conclusion, he did say that all economic forecasts indicate that next year we're going to face the same, if not even more, economic challenges. What do you make of that?
Yeah, because I believe that the Ukraine war, nobody knows the end of that yet. And since we don't know the end of the Ukraine war, we cannot predict what is going to happen in 2026. So we can only analyze and say if the Ukraine war is over and is over in an amicable settlement, which will sort of not disrupt all this international trade, etc., we can say, well, the economies will take a new footing. And we also know that in China, which is a bigger player in world economics, is also grappling with COVID-19 up to now. And it has done a lot of destruction in China, disturbed a lot of their trade, etc., which has also compounded some of the problems that we have. But as I said, the economy that I have, I would not say what he is saying is not true, because what he is saying is that we are likely to be impacted by those problems. Because we have still not, from the budget, I've not seen anything there that shows me that we've taken a new direction to be able to build our economy in an interdependent way, to the extent that we will not suffer as much in terms of food. As you can see right now, what we are importing, just rice alone, is costing us about $5 billion. So if I were the government, if I were the head of this state, I would say, let's begin now, from now, and invest $1 billion into agriculture, different from all the donor support. Let's put our own, internal funds, $1 billion into agriculture. So if we do that, we are going to, import. We can expect that we are going to import less, import less food, amounting to $1 billion. In the next year, $2 billion. In another year, $3 billion. In 5 years, you have almost finished importation of rice. But that is not what I have seen. What I have seen is the same trend of dependency, looking for donor support, extending embassies to be able to, maximize donor support, etc., etc. So that's what I have seen. I've not seen a new trajectory really that will tell me. Only new trajectory he is talking about is how do we increase taxes. And anywhere you continue to increase taxes, what you are doing is that you are increasing the poverty of the ordinary person. Because those taxes, once they are increased, they are going to fall back to the ordinary people. So that's the trend I have seen. So I would say what he's saying is true. We should expect more hardship in 2023.
Thank you very much, Honorable. We appreciate your time. Honorable Swaibu, they are talking to us. He's the NAM for Woolly East. So, he's sharing his thoughts with us, Mr. Ade, regarding the minister's...
so I wonder if you can hear me.
Budget speech.
I wonder if you can hear me. Could you just introduce that gentleman? I think we missed the beginning. We didn't hear who that gentleman was that you were just speaking to.
Yes, so like I was saying, we were speaking to Honorable Swaibu Ture, who is the member for Woolly East. He was sharing his thoughts with us regarding the minister's budget speech, and also on the need for a new direction. Again, regarding the minister's budget speech, I think the main highlight is, the fact that he is saying all economic forecasts indicate that next year, we are likely to face even more economic challenges, which, according to the Honorable member for Woolly is quite worrying. And I believe majority of the people in this chamber, who are in this chamber as well, listening to that would equally be worried. But again, I think it shows that we need a new direction. I'm sure as the days, as the day progresses, in fact, in the next few days, people will continue to talk about this budget speech. And of course, at our level as well, we would delve deep into this speech and try to break down some of these things. But again, it's been a marathon speech highlighting government's economic plan rather, and as well as the expenditure, the revenue plans for next year.
Okay, thank you for that, Eso. Thank you very much for that. And before I come to my next guest, Mr. Lamin Mane, I just wanted to pick up on something there very, very quickly. Actually, when Eso was speaking to the member there for Woolly East, I think he said, it's almost as if he'd read my notes, because my notes here saying, what about resilience so we don't suffer the same shocks? And he kind of hinted at that, although the minister did mention several times about better resource mobilization. So, Mr. Mane, Mr. Lamin Mane, if I could come to you, what were your immediate takeaways from that speech?
Thank you very much, Mr. Drame, for having me. It's indeed a privilege to be here to listen to the budget speech for 2023 and to proffer our comments and our views. Obviously, I would start on a sympathetic note. It's very clear to everybody that the job of a Minister of Finance is a very arduous one.
Particularly
and that is one of the events that underscore that is the reading of the budget. It's marathon, it's a marathon speech, as everybody has said. And I think on that note, the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs has conducted himself very well. He has done a very good delivery. You know, and I didn't even see any sweats on his forehead.
Until after.
Now, my views, general views as follows. They don't differ very much from what the Honorable Member of Parliament has stated, and also Doctor and yourself. The Minister actually concluded very well on the broad thrust of the budget statement, and he talked to the very difficult external environment, which is affecting all the countries in the world. He's talked about the lingering effects of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, where here we are very happy that at least we've gone over the worst, the worst period. He talked about the need for resilience, and he spelled out a number of measures which are aimed at attaining that. I don't know whether at this point I need to go into all the details, but in broad terms, what I would like to underscore is that the difficult external environments, we call them exogenous factors, they will always continue in this world in one form or the other. We pray all the time that we will have more of the benign developments than the adverse ones. So that puts a premium on building resilience by every country and every society. You can never rest on your laurels. And I think one of the areas for building this resilience is the macroeconomic management. I did work in the central bank before, very briefly. I worked in the IMF, and I think all said and done, the Gambia has put in place a very robust macroeconomic management system. The actions by the central bank, as Doctor has alluded to, and also the measures on the fiscal front. Because one of the indicators of good fiscal management is your deficit should not go above 5%. Of course, when you look under the under the bonnet, you might point to a few problems, and the projected fiscal deficit is now 3%, up from 4% from last year. I think that is laudable. I also listened very attentively to the issue of enhancing domestic resource mobilization. Gambia will continue depending, of course, on external funding, external support. There is no doubt about that. But we need to accelerate actions on improving domestic resource mobilization. And I think earlier on we talked about this, the scope for that, improving tax collection, tax buoyancy, and so forth. Another point that I want to touch on this point, which is related to resilience, is paying more attention to climate change. Because the adverse effects of climate change will affect all spheres of life, as the Minister has mentioned, from agriculture to fisheries to tourism and so forth. So the greening dimension of the very important for resilience, and then the private sector. But I want to end on one note. Transformation of the structures of the economy should be very much at the heart of resilience building. Because when you transform your economic structure, you reduce the vulnerability of the economy to these adverse changes. So I would have loved to hear more about that. Yes, there has been a list of measures in agricultural, improving agricultural productivity, diversifying tourism, touching on manufacturing, but we need more concrete actions in these areas. And then, of course, the issues of trade and employment creation. So I probably should stop there and give chance to...
Please, if I could come to you, Dr. Jame. We've heard there, and right at the end, we heard the finance minister. He gave a long list of thanks to some of these donors and some of these partners who have helped us to where we are today. And I guess that was what the honourable member was commenting on about this law. But within the speech, we heard him mention time and time again about better and improved resource mobilization. But I think you were going to delve into specifics, if I could come to you for that.
Yes, that is one thing that I want to discuss, because he did discuss about resource mobilization, but most of the time it is focusing on taxation. Yeah, you can see the list of tax and customs even that he did. But we are forgetting one agent, that is the diaspora.
Yes.
And remittances and the diaspora. Yes, we have first generation Gambians, second generation diasporas, 1.5s. We are not banking on them. And then remittances, this year, we received almost $777 million US dollars.
I was going to say 780.
Yes.
And that's just in the formal
yes.
sector. So the calculation was, if you included the informal, we received $1 billion.
Yeah.
And yet the prediction was that they would go down. And yet they didn't. And the minister, again, in his, I was going to come to that, because the minister in his actually predicted also that they would go down. For the last 4 years, they've been predicting that they'll go down. In fact, they've been going to record numbers. Even though the people sending these, some of them have lost their jobs, some of them are on furlough and so on, but they've still been sending more. But sorry to interrupt there, but I just wanted to touch on that point.
That is a resource that we can bank on, because we have a good number of good diaspora communities. We can work on diaspora bonds. Countries have been doing it. Ghana, Rwanda has been doing it, and if you look Ethiopia, Nigeria, you look all over the world, they are working on this. And then this is an area that we can work on. Another area that we can also work on, and I was very impressed when I heard it from the minister. He did say that we are going to focus, we are going to give agriculture the priority.
He said top priority.
Yes, agricultural development needs to be financed. So who is going to finance agricultural development? And then we know that in the Gambia, agricultural development, the financing of agricultural development, apart from donors, it is dominated by public expenditure.
That's right, government.
So how are you going to bring in private investors?
Well, I was going to come to that, because isn't it the case that some of our people in the diaspora, and you can also pick up on this, some of our people in the diaspora, they actually are interested in farming or in agriculture, because in the countries they live in the so-called developed countries, they can see the benefits and the profits that there can be from agriculture. And that might be an area that they might want to invest. If you can take that, and if you could also address that.
Yes, so maybe the problem will be for the agricultural development is just access to financing. Because in our banking sector, if you want to borrow to finance, you have like 17% interest rate to 20% interest rates. That is high cost of borrowing. So what the minister is proposing, that is he did say that they are going to create a fund for an incentive-based risk-sharing mechanism.
That's right.
Yeah, so that is very good, because what they are going to do, what they are going to do is they are going to de-risk the banks. They are going to de-risk the agricultural sector, so that banks can give loans to this sector. And they are also going to give incentives to farmers so that they can pay back their loans to the bank. So it is a two-sided. It is a two-sided approach. So that is a very important point to note. But my fear is this financing mechanisms is mostly for small scale and medium farmers. So if you need big and commercial investors in the agricultural sector, you need more than that.
That's right.
Yeah. So if you need more than that, what do you need to do? First, we need to start preparing projects. Prepare projects, develop them, make them bankable, and then approach big investors who can invest in these sectors. So there is a lot of things that we can do. There are so many innovative financing instruments. If we just cross the border to Senegal, they are doing that. Using the Senegalese for sovereign wealth fund, Confunzi. if you go to Senegal, the airport that they are using, it's private sector funded.
That's right.
Yeah, so most of these things, you don't need government funding to finance all the projects that you need. If we are going to rely only on the government financing, we will not be where we are maybe in the next 50 years.
So Mr. Mann, if I could come to you for that specific point. We talked about agriculture and we talked about the de-risking to try and invite investors into the sector, and it is very much needed. I mean, what's your take on that?
I think I would still go back, allow me to go back to the issue of remittances.
Sure.
Again, maybe I would be a little bit charitable that these measures are well known to the Ministry of Finance, but they couldn't discuss all of them during a budget session.
Yeah, that's right.
But if they are listening, we want to really emphasize, put an emphasis on some of the specific measures. Doctor has mentioned, mentioned that I was in Rwanda for 5 years. We worked on this, the diaspora, funding.
Yes, that's right.
Went to Kenya, Ethiopia. My last duty station was in Ethiopia. They had a very big project to attract the diaspora. I know there are many Ethiopians outside, and they are really
the Grand
increasing.
Renaissance Dam.
Exactly,
I mean, a lot of the funding came from
all came from the diaspora and some local, let's say the public members of the public, patriotic members of the public. So when we look at the case of the Gambia, in the last article I wrote on structural transformation, I also came up with those figures. And I think what we would like to see now, as both of you have emphasized, is a more aggressive move on the part of the government to target and to tap, increase the available funds that are out there, and they're there because all these countries are increasing the diaspora funds flow into them. And I also, interestingly, discussed with one colleague not too long ago. The minister talked about professionalizing the foreign service. And what we discussed is Gambia being a small country, we need to also be aggressive about promoting trade and say that members of the diplomatic service should receive training in trade promotion because after all, we are not a big country. What strategic political role do we play? Well, it's important, but we could be more aggressive in utilizing those resources we are allocating to the embassies for some of the staff to work also on trade promotion, which can also increase our resilience and resource influence.
And if I could just quickly pick on that in a general sense, because I was working on a project earlier this year to target all of these heads of state who go to the UN General Assembly. Because when I did a check, we found out that all of them go there, none of them talk about trade. They just go there, they make speech. And of all the African presidents who spoke, only the president of Namibia used his speech to say, yes, we are a country, we have diamonds, we have this and that. We want to broaden our, he said, and I'm going to use this opportunity to appeal to investors to come to our country. He was the only one who did that. None of them do it. And you're right. And so, we need to tap into what's out there, particularly our own diaspora. In Rwanda, they used the Rwanda diaspora bond to now build public sector housing. It's completely funded. The first 10 million was raised from their diaspora to build houses for public servants. And so I know you had other sectors that you wanted to delve into, but let's not linger on that one alone. but
yes. So one also interesting thing that also came up from the presentation is about debt.
Yes.
Yeah, it's I am very passionate.
I saw you.
Yes, I am very passionate about that because. First, that is not bad. It depends on what you use the debt for.
Exactly.
Yes,
and then how you manage it.
And if you look at our expenditures, it is mostly recurrent.
What this is it? Yes,
it is mostly recurrent expenditure.
That's right.
Yes, and allowances. But recently we have been seeing things like investing in the infrastructure. Yeah, it has been gaining momentum in the past 2-3 years.
Sure.
But one thing that the minister highlighted was the fact that the IMF study. The latest IMF study did mention that Gambia is at a very high risk of distress.
Yes.
And then we have a very limited borrowing space.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah. But what are we doing? Over the years, expenditure has been increasing. Sure. And revenue last year has declined, but they are projecting that revenue next year will increase. Yeah? Yes. So given that revenue has declined and expenditure increases, so what we are faced with is the fact that we are going to borrow more. We are going to borrow more because we have already seen the fiscal deficit. So since we are borrowing more, and then there is this depreciation of the Gambian dollar, which makes even debt financing, debt servicing high because of that loss. Yes. It means that we are going to suffer, we are going to bleed with this, and then there needs to be government intervention in the foreign exchange market.
Indeed, which they've kind of kept away from. They've really kept away from. But how do you see that intervention, and how will it be? Because they've sort of stood back and just allowed it. I mean, if you go along just Kairaba Avenue alone, I think there are 12 foreign exchange transfer bureaus just on this street. So government has always kind of kept a distance, and they've not gotten involved. How can they get involved now?
You know, the forex market is running mad. People are hoarding their currencies, expecting that it will depreciate further.
This is it.
That is what is going. Sure. But government can intervene, but it should not be long-lived. Sure. Yeah, and then the best solution for it is import substitution. Sure. That is the long-term solution, because the only reason why the dollar is depreciating over the years is because we import almost everything and we export nothing, almost. So what happens is there is always that pressure on the dollar, and then the dollar will continue appreciating in the medium term, and then this is something that the minister did highlight. Sure.
So yes, I mean, as I said, at certain points I saw your eyes light up. I saw you writing furiously. So just if I could come to you for some of the other things that actually made you, particularly keen, because I think all of us, as I said, 20 or I stopped counting when it got to about 25 pages. There was a lot there that the minister, it was extensive speech, it covered, as I said, my introduction, it was kind of a report card on all the ministries. But there were certain things I know we talked about even before we came in the studio, that we kind of smiled because he mentioned them. And I just wondered if you could just delve into some of those.
Yes, let me just go back a little bit on the debt part. Sure. Because if you look at the debt stock, our debt stock increases by 19% between 2020 and 2021. Sure. And then it increases by almost 28% currently. So this is telling us that we will keep borrowing, and then once we increase borrowing, it is going to put pressure on our fiscal position, because we will have less to spend in the educational sector, less to spend on the health sector, less to spend on things that will move the country forward. Because we are just going to service debt. And one point that that the minister, I think, omitted is the role of the private sector. He did mention about the role of the private sector, in financing development, especially financing infrastructure development.
Well, indeed, I thought that would come up a lot more. I mean, there was a few, when he talked about agriculture, bringing in the private, but it wasn't as deep as one would have expected.
Yes, and one of the we have two instruments that can help in trying to increase private sector participation in financing development. One of them is the PPP bill.
Indeed, he mentioned the bill which is now gone for assent and will become an act.
And then the capital market bill. These two bills should provide the regulation framework in which private sector can participate in the development of this country.
And also for external, if I'm an investor and I want to invest in the Gambia and I see something like that, this is something that will attract me. So they should fast track it to make sure that it I don't know where the problem is, but I do tell my students that limited funding is never an excuse for underdevelopment. Limited funding. Because we've seen other places get around that.
Just move to Senegal, you will see the development that is going on, and then it is mostly financed by foreign investors, FDIs. So these are things that
because they have confidence in the country in which they're going to invest.
And then what they did was, they developed projects. So they did that through funds. So they said, what are the development priorities of the country? Example, the Gambia, what are our development priorities? What do we need to do? So they identified the most important or things that needs to be done in the country. Then what they did was they started creating projects and then trying to package the projects in ways that will make it bankable, in way that will make it attractive to an investor to invest in.
Sure.
So once they did that, then they move all over the world using the embassies,
yes.
using their networks all over the world, and then bring in investors to invest in this sector.
So let me put you in a position, slightly difficult position, possibly. The members in the National Assembly, they have 14 days in which to consider. If you were speaking directly to them, we all in here, when we were watching, there were things we identified that we would have liked to have seen, liked to have heard. What questions, what difficult questions would you like them to consider and to discuss when they're actually going through this budget?
So one question I would want to ask is how much is going to be invested in the financing instrument that the minister asked. Sure. He did say that we are going to create a fund. How much is that fund going to be?
I guess that will come up, but yes, we can't be complacent and say it will be asked. But you would hope that it will be asked, because when we heard from that honourable member there, he sounded like somebody who would ask the difficult questions.
Yes,
but perhaps not everybody will.
Yeah, no, he will ask the difficult question, but he did say that the government is not putting much attention on the agricultural sector, for example, to feed ourselves. So that the answer to that question will depend on how much is being invested in this fund.
Sure.
Because that amount will tell how much of private investments that can be raised and how much of capital can be given to investors or private sectors to invest, not free, but they are going to pay back. So that is one question. The other question that I would want to ask is, what is the government doing to streamline government expenditures, especially when it comes to foreign affairs, foreign ministers?
But even the civil service here, a lot of people think it's bloated and it's over. But there's a kind of they're scared about reducing it, because if you get rid of a lot of people, where do you put them? Where do they go?
I will not even argue it is bloated, because depending on the sectors that you are speaking with, the minister did say that the Ministry of Basic Education has the largest budget share.
But it's kind of recurrent.
Yeah, largest budget share. Yeah. But it has the largest budget share because you have a lot of teachers in this sector. So that is why you have a lot of recurrent expenditure. But it is mostly recurrent expenditure, not for capital development.
Not for capital, exactly.
Yeah, so that is taking a lot of our
Because when it comes to capital, you have the likes of MRC Holland coming and building schools. The government are not building the schools.
Yes.
But a lot of it is staff.
And if you look at the numbers, the development budget for the Ministry of Basic Education is like 1/4 of the development budget for the Office of the President, for example.
Right.
So this is something that sends a big information.
Sure.
Apart from that, you can see the health sector.
Sure.
It has a very large recurrent expenditure.
Indeed.
Yeah, because we have. But if you look at foreign affairs, you look at, let's say, Europe alone, we have an embassy in Paris.
Yes.
Yeah, we have an embassy in London.
Yeah.
We have another one in Geneva.
Yeah.
We have another one in Belgium.
That's right.
Yeah. So you need one effective embassy that can work on this, because the transport network is very good.
Want one that can be for the whole European Union, really.
Yes, and then if you have a very proactive team, that can be done.
So if I could come to Mr. Mane here, we don't have much time. I wish we had more. But, I mean, I've thrown the question to Dr. Jammeh here, and I've said, we heard the speech, it was deep. But as we made notes, all of us kind of looked at each other at certain points, and we thought, there are certain things that aren't being said and certain difficult questions that are not being addressed. If you were to, National Assembly members are watching this, they have 14 days in which to debate this. What were the sort of things that you would like them to talk about, to address in the speech, and that you would like to see drawn out that haven't been drawn out already?
Thank you very much, Mr. Drame, for that question, because I think it's very, very important. I looked at some other very critical national development issues. The issue of unemployment.
Right.
I know the minister talked to the activities of the Ministries of Youth and Sports, and also of trade, I believe, industry, regional integration, and employment. I would have loved to hear more. And I would like to link the issue of unemployment to education. You talked about this earlier on.
Yeah, before we came on.
They talked about TVET, the introduction of the new university, the University of USET, Science, Engineering, and Technology.
Sure.
We have to link the issue of dealing with unemployment with the educational system,
Sure.
particularly the component that deals with TVET.
Yes.
Those are very good moves.
I mean, they've done recently, in the last couple of weeks, the president and various ministers have announced the kind of moving on from the techie fee.
Yeah.
They've announced this new the employment plan,
Right.
23 to 26, which is actually meant to take that on from there. And a lot of it is, a big component of that is TVET.
Yeah.
And they want that to be a big thing because it's a huge gap that's missing.
Right.
If you go to the convocation every year at the university, as you can guarantee, there are a lot of people who are actually doing disciplines that one would say aren't the ones that are most needed in the country. How do we steer people in that direction? If I could come to you first, we don't have much time left.
Yeah. So let me just note, in order to reinforce that point, the director of employment recently said that youth unemployment has reached 41%.
41%, yeah.
So the issue of TVET is very important, but also involving the youth in the productive sectors,
Sure.
particularly agriculture. They have also come up, the minister mentioned some of the measures which are aimed at encouraging the youth to go into agriculture,
Indeed, yes.
improving the agricultural productivity. Not much has been said about manufacturing, stimulating the manufacturing sector. As I said, I had a privilege to work in some of those countries like Rwanda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Mauritius, Seychelles. So we should also look at China. You know, China is also trying to divest itself from some of the probably more labor-intensive manufacturing activities. And one factory could employ between 3,000 to 5,000 people. So you can imagine if we have only 2 of those here in the Gambia, it literally suck up the unemployed labor out there. So that is also an area that I am keen, and I've been talking to many government officials about it.
If I could come, because as I said, we don't have much time. I mean, we've heard talk by the president and others about mechanizing farming. If you mechanize farming, something that can do the work of 100 people means that 100 people are suddenly out of work. And yet if we move to, as you say, where is this thing about manufacturing? If I could buy canned mangoes from Guinea in Sierra Leone in 1965, why are we not canning mangoes in Gambia in 2022? So in closing, if I could just have a few words from you overall, or possibly on that specific point.
Yes, because we do not have the value chain. First, let's start with the production.
Sure.
We need more people in the production side.
Sure.
So if you take mechanization, what it does, it replaces human beings with machines. But these are things that countries grow through.
Sure.
You don't just start with mechanization.
No.
You start with being labor intensive, then you move to higher productive, and then you reallocate your labor from one source, from agricultural sector, for example, to the industry and manufacturing.
Exactly.
Because the manufacturing industry should be fed by
trained people.
And then the raw materials that you need, the materials that you need in the industry
have to come
from agriculture.
That's right.
So you cannot just jump to industry without having that agricultural base. And then you cannot even move to service. We do say that Gambia is a service-based economy. What are we servicing? We are just on buying and selling.
Indeed.
Buying and selling, from importing from other countries, and then we export. And our export trade has been going down the drain. But what I will give emphasis, I will agree with Uncle Lamin, because he did say that we need to focus on job creation. Because if you move to Serekunda market around 5-6, you see a lot of young Gambians unemployed, and they are in the black market. Just roaming on things that they can capitalize on. So these are people that can be used. They need to be trained. TVET is one way, but it needs to be relevant. So here we need a lot of blue-collar jobs.
Indeed.
Yes, if you want to buy for example, a bed.
So in 30 seconds, in 30 seconds for you?
In 30 seconds, there is much that needs to be done.
Sure.
So what needs to be done is we need to give agriculture its tools. We need to inject finance in the agricultural sector before we can move in the industrial sector.
And if I could give the final word to you, Uncle Lamin, please.
Thank you. My final word relates to the issues that the population knows very well. And if you don't talk about them, they will not forgive us. The imperative to improve health service delivery.
Sure.
I know the minister talked about it.
Yes.
But you know, at a personal level, I believe all of us are experiencing deaths of nieces, sisters, you know,
friends, family members, and
friends
so on.
and family members when they are delivering. And this is a very troubling issue for me. The issue of quality education as well, from the lowest level to the highest. You know, the failure rate is very high in the West African examinations.
But I'm afraid we've run out of time.
Okay. So
but I think most of you get the message. So if I could just say a final thank you to, on my right, Mr. Lamin Mane, thank you so much. And on my left, Dr. Keba Jame. And to the viewers, sorry we couldn't go really, really deep into it, as deep as the minister went. He made a marathon speech. We haven't had time for a marathon program, but thank you very much for watching QTV, and we hope you enjoyed this broadcast. Thank you.